Hello everyone, welcome back to GraveTales. I know many of you enjoy listening to these videos as you fall asleep. I want you to leave a comment on where in the world you're tuning in from, and if you're enjoying the story, be sure to like and subscribe. Alright, now let's get into tonight's stories. I never expected to leave the city, let alone for something like this. My Uncle Gary passed away in the middle of spring. Peacefully, according to the coroner, though no one could ever quite explain the expression on his face when they found him. It was twisted into something like a scream, but not one of terror, more like a scream of understanding. Like he'd finally figured something out at the last possible second, and it broke him. My mom didn't want to talk about it. She and Uncle Gary hadn't been close for a while. Not since their father died and Gary inherited the gas station while she got nothing but the old house in town. She called it cursed. I thought she was just bitter, but I was at a dead end in the city. Laid off, broke, and months behind on rent when the letter came. Gary had left the gas station to me, no one else. The keys came in a padded envelope, along with a hand-scrawled note. "Whatever you do, don't trust Pump 6. That was it. No signature, no explanation, just those words burned into the bottom of the paper like they'd been carved with panic. The place was about 3 hours north of anywhere you'd call civilization. Trees, hills, and a two-lane highway that didn't see much more than rusted pickups and logging trucks. The gas station was perched on the edge of the forest, the kind of place you wouldn't even notice if your tank wasn't running dry. It was flanked by a crooked wooden fence, a sagging canopy of rusted metal over the pumps, and a tiny store that looked like it had been built in the 60s and forgotten since. I arrived around 6 p.m., just as the sun was starting to fall behind the pine trees, stretching their shadows across the gravel lot like long fingers. I stood there for a long while before going inside, just taking it in. The air smelled different. Wood smoke, fuel, and something sour beneath it, something that tugged at the back of my throat. The wind didn't sound like wind. It rustled too rhythmically, like something crawling through the branches. The inside was stuck in time. Dust coated everything. Canned beans, off-brand soda, beef jerky with expiration dates from a year ago. The old register still worked, though it let out a mechanical wheeze every time I punched a button. The lights buzzed overhead like they were powered by ghosts. In the back, a narrow hallway led to a cramped office and a single restroom that smelled like mildew and rust. There were no security cameras, no computers, just a safe, a wall calendar from 1998, why, I still don't know, and an old TV that only picked up static. On the desk was a yellowed notebook, and on the cover, written in thick Sharpie, were the words, "Logbook, don't throw out." Inside were pages and pages of handwritten notes, stretching back to 1983. Most of them were boring fuel deliveries, sales tallies, weather updates. But every so often, there'd be a line written in red ink, "Pump 6 turned on by itself again. No vehicle present." Or customer used Pump 6 after closing. Came back the next day confused. Said his wife was missing. Or simply do not use Pump 6 after dark, even if they beg. I thought it was a joke at first, a weird sense of humor. Maybe Gary trying to scare off trespassers or squatters. But the deeper I went, the less funny it became. My first few days were uneventful. The gas station didn't get much business, maybe 5 cars a day. Most were locals, quiet, weathered people who nodded instead of talking. A few came inside to buy smokes or soda. They'd always glance toward the pumps when they left, and more than a few turned pale when they saw me filling from Pump 6. It was the farthest one from the store, just on the edge of the canopy. The paint was peeling. The hose had a crack near the nozzle, and the digital screen flickered like it couldn't decide if it was alive or not. I tried using it on my second day just to test everything. The second I touched the handle, the wind picked up like a freight train rushing past me. I thought it was a freak gust, but all the trees stayed still. Only the area around Pump 6 shuddered, like it was caught in a different weather pattern. Then I heard something, whispers, not loud, not clear, just breathy murmurs curling around my ears. I dropped the nozzle and backed away. I told myself it was stress, maybe the solitude, maybe this was how people lost their minds in rural towns. Too much silence, too much stillness. But the warnings started to come. The first was from a woman in her 60s who came. The days started bleeding together after that. I kept telling myself I was tired, adjusting to the quiet, the rhythm of isolation, the eerie inertia of a life lived on the edge of the map. But something was changing in me, too. I began waking up with dirt under my nails, even though I hadn't been outside. My boots moved during the night. I'd line them up by the door before bed, and every morning I'd find them turned around, toes pointing toward the hallway. The register drawer opened on its own. Twice, I found a single silver coin in it, old as hell, worn smooth and cold as ice. It didn't match anything in the till. There were scratches around pump 6, deep, deliberate gouges, like something had tried to claw its way out of the concrete beneath it. The locals stopped making eye contact. Some even avoided the store altogether. A man named Rick, who owned the bait shop down the road, came in one evening right before close and slammed a heavy book on the counter. He didn't say a word, just nodded to it and walked out. Inside was a collection of newspaper clippings and typed pages, some yellowed with age. The first one was dated 1964, local teen missing after late-night gas stop. Then another and another. Every few years, like clockwork. Someone vanished, car left idling, wallet still in the seat, shoes still beside the pump. Always pump 6, always after midnight. Some had descriptions of what witnesses saw. One claimed the boy walked into the forest and never came out. Another said the pump glowed blue for a few seconds, and then there was silence. One clipping from 1971 included a photo, a blurred, grainy image of a man standing by pump 6, but his head was wrong. Too tall, too narrow, and his eyes were two pale discs like flashlights in the dark. A typed note paperclipped to the page read, "Same figure reported multiple times. Doesn't speak. Doesn't move. If seen, leave the area immediately. Do not engage." The last page wasn't a newspaper clipping. It was a handwritten account from a woman named Judith M., dated 1989. She wrote that she saw her dead sister standing next to pump 6. Not a hallucination, not a memory. Her actual sister, who had drowned as a child, soaked and pale and humming a lullaby they used to sing. Judith swore the girl raised her hand and beckoned, said she took a step forward before something yanked her back. She woke up hours later behind the counter with scratches down her arms and gravel in her mouth. She left town that same week. I haven't found any records of her since. Things escalated quickly after that. It wasn't just dreams anymore. I started seeing people at the edge of the woods. Not every night, but enough. They were always too far to see clearly. They didn't move, didn't speak, just watched. Sometimes there were 2, sometimes as many as 5. I tried calling the sheriff once, told him I thought someone might be casing the property. He sighed, told me flatly, "Keep your lights off, don't acknowledge them, and stay away from pump 6 after dark." That was the end of the conversation. No follow-up, nothing. I started leaving a bat behind the counter, and a flashlight with fresh batteries at all times. I barely slept, and when I did, I dreamt of things that didn't belong in dreams. Floodlights clicking on in endless dark forests, static pouring from gas station speakers, voices that came out of the freezer, cold hands gripping mine under the counter, even though I was alone. One night, I woke up standing in the lot, just standing there in my boxers, barefoot, staring at pump 6. The nozzle was in my hand. It wasn't even connected to a car. I ran back inside and locked the doors, heart jackhammering in my chest. I started checking the logbook every day after that, and something strange happened. I noticed entries appearing that I didn't write. They were in my handwriting, but I had no memory of them. 6 a.m. Trucker said he saw someone crawl out of pump 6. Or 11:43 p.m. Woman came inside. Said she saw her dead mother waving at her from the forest. No cars nearby. Or simply, "Don't let the door open again. You're not strong enough." My hand trembled each time I saw a new one. Sometimes I tried to confront the memory, force myself to recall writing it. But it was like someone else had taken my body for a few minutes, used it, and left. I tried turning off pump 6 completely, flipped the breakers, pulled the fuse, Even jammed a screwdriver into the console to fry the electronics. It still turned on. I'd hear it click in the middle of the night, the dull hum of the display lighting up. One time I ran out with a hammer, determined to smash it to pieces. But the moment I crossed the painted boundary of Pump 6's island, I was hit with a wave of nausea so intense I dropped to my knees. The sky rippled. That's the only word for it. It looked like someone had dropped a stone into the night itself, and the stars shook like reflections on disturbed water. I vomited hard. When I looked up, there was a man standing over me. Same one as before, or at least I think so. He wore a tattered gas station uniform. His skin was waxy and too pale. He didn't blink, didn't move. His mouth was slightly open, like he was stuck mid-sentence. I blinked and he was gone, but something remained. A shadow on the concrete, shaped like a man, burnt into the stone like the echo of an atomic blast. I started keeping a journal separate from the logbook. I wrote in it every day, trying to keep my mind clear, trying to remember who I was. But even that began to fail. I'd find pages I hadn't written, horrible things, drawings of faceless people, blueprints of impossible machines, lists of names I didn't recognize. One page was just the word hunger, repeated over and over until the ink tore through the paper. I stopped writing after that. The store began to change too. The power flickered more often. The freezer would hum at odd hours, even when unplugged. The radio only played static, except on certain nights when it would broadcast voices that didn't sound human. Not growls, not words, something in between. I tried recording it once, but the file corrupted instantly. One night, I came into the store to find every item on the shelves turned backward. All the labels faced the wall. That same night, the mirror in the bathroom cracked down the middle and bled a black, tar-like substance. I couldn't explain it. I stopped trying. Then came the man with the stitched mouth. He walked in just after sunset. No car, just appeared in the doorway like he'd been waiting for the right moment. His skin was grayish. His eyes were sunken and bright yellow, like brine-soaked egg yolks, and his lips had been sewn shut with thick, black thread, crisscrossed like laces on a boot. He didn't speak, didn't even make a sound. Just walked in, dropped a key onto the counter, and pointed toward Pump 6. Then he turned and walked back into the night. I ran after him, but the second I stepped out the door, he was gone. No footsteps, no sound. Just cold wind and a pressure in my chest like a weight had been dropped on it. The key he left was ancient, iron, with a bone handle and a series of numbers etched into the shaft. 060666. I threw it away. It was back the next morning, sitting in my coat pocket. After that, I knew the station wanted something from me. Not the building, not even the land, Pump 6. It was like it had a will, an appetite. It wasn't a machine anymore. It was a mouth waiting, and every once in a while it got hungry. I stopped sleeping entirely. I drank to stay awake. Caffeine didn't work anymore. I talked to myself, tried calling my mom. She didn't answer. The line just crackled like someone breathing heavily. My phone battery started dying faster than usual. The charger melted one night. That was the same night I heard scratching beneath the floorboards. I went into the crawl space the next day, found tiny bones. Hundreds of them, human-shaped, child-sized. Some still had tufts of hair attached. I threw up until I couldn't see straight. When I crawled back out, the entire station smelled like gasoline and rot. I called the sheriff again. No answer. Then the lights went out and the bell rang. Pump 6 had turned on by itself again. And someone was using it. I should have stayed inside. I should have locked the door and pretended none of it was happening. But something about the sound, the rhythmic click of the pump handle, the hollow hum of fuel flowing into a phantom tank, it pulled at me. Not like a call for help, not like a cry in the dark. It was more intimate than that, like recognition, like it had always known me, and I was only now realizing I had always known it. I stepped out into the cold, and I do mean cold. The air had dropped 20 degrees since sunset. Fog crept low across the ground, swallowing my boots as I walked, and the trees beyond the pump were almost completely gone, smothered in mist. The only thing clear was pump 6. Bathed in that eerie bluish glow, the numbers on the display flickering between real prices and something else. Symbols, maybe. Sometimes letters. Sometimes just lines that shouldn't form anything, but made my eyes burn when I stared too long. And there was someone standing there again. I don't know how I got close to him. I don't remember walking, just being near. He was tall. Too tall. Thin, not like a person starving, but like something stretched. Like proportions had been altered. His back was to me. He wore a long coat soaked down to the hem, and the fabric shimmered with something slick. Not water, something thicker. His hands were at his sides. And even though he never looked at me, I knew, bone deep, that he knew I was there. The pump handle clicked in his grip, even though there was no car beside him. Just the hose dangling, leading nowhere, connected to nothing. Fuel dripped from the nozzle and vanished into the air before hitting the ground. And I swear, God help me, I swear the ground was wrong. The concrete beneath his feet wasn't wet. It was moving, pulsing, like muscle beneath skin. I could see it flex with every drop of fuel, like the station was drinking, like pump 6 was feeding something. And I couldn't move, couldn't scream, just stared. Then, slowly, he raised his hand and pointed toward me. His finger was long, segmented, like an insect's limb. And just before my vision blacked out, I heard something behind me whisper, "You're late." I woke up inside. The lights were off. My head throbbed like someone had beaten me with a lead pipe. I reached for the flashlight under the counter, but it was already on, pointed at the ceiling. The beam was weak and flickering. My journal sat open, pages soaked through, though it hadn't rained. The only entry legible said, "He spoke to you. You belong to it now." My hands were shaking too badly to hold the flashlight. I stumbled to the back office, locked the door, and tried to make sense of anything. But nothing worked. My phone was dead, my car wouldn't start, and the lights outside now refused to turn on at all. Everything was shadows, save for the steady, low blue glow of pump 6 beyond the window, like a beacon, a mouth waiting for the next morsel. And that night, I wasn't alone in the station. I heard footsteps, deliberate, measured, like someone walking on a stage behind the walls. Then scratching, not rats, not animals, fingernails. Someone or something was inside the walls. I pressed my ear to the drywall and heard whispering in a voice that sounded like mine, repeating something over and over again. "I know who I am. I know who I am. I know who I..." Until it stopped. Then I heard breathing, and it wasn't mine. I began to lose time more frequently after that. I'd close my eyes for a moment and open them to find daylight gone, the counter covered in dust, the freezer humming a tune like a music box. Once, I blacked out for what felt like minutes and woke up in the bathroom covered in pump oil, barefoot, with symbols carved into the floor around me. I didn't remember doing it, but they were etched deep. One was identical to what I'd seen flickering on Pump SIX's display the first night. I started checking the security tapes, desperate for something, anything, but every time I queued them up, the footage glitched. I'd catch flashes of figures, too tall, heads bent at impossible angles, crawling on the ceiling. Sometimes I'd see myself, standing outside at 2 a.m. talking to nothing. Other times it was worse. I wasn't on the tape at all, but the door opened, and the pump activated, and the bell rang, and something crawled through the ceiling tiles like a spider with too many limbs. One frame, just one, showed a face behind me, inches from mine, pale, expressionless, eyes filled with static. When I paused it, the power went out completely. There's something under pump 6. That's the only thing I'm sure of now. I started digging near it one morning, right before sunrise. I don't know why. I woke up with the urge, grabbed a shovel from the shed, and started hacking at the dirt behind the pump like a man possessed. The deeper I went, the worse it got. I pulled up bones, human definitely, teeth, a shoe with flesh still in it. Then I found metal, not pipes, not infrastructure. This thing, it was old, older than the station, a kind of hatch or seal. The edges were embossed with markings I'd never seen before. The shovel sparked when I hit it, Beneath the layer of rust was something black and shimmering, like obsidian, but soft to the touch. I reached out, and the second I brushed my fingers against it, everything changed. The wind stopped, the birds stopped, the world held its breath, and I felt something knock from below. Once, twice, like someone trapped under ice. I dropped the shovel and ran. My ears filled with a sound I can only describe as music sung backwards by a choir of dying animals. When I returned hours later, the hole was gone, covered up, smooth earth, no sign of digging. The shovel was back in the shed. From then on, Pump 6 started activating on its own at the same time every night, 12:06 a.m. The screen would flicker, the handle would lift slightly, and a voice would play over the intercom. Never the same, always someone I knew. Sometimes my uncle, sometimes my mother. Once it was my own voice whispering things I didn't want to hear. "You belong to the 6th, it said once. He opened the gate with your hands. The fuel is memory. The nozzle is mouth." I stopped eating, couldn't keep food down. My teeth began to loosen. One fell out while I was brushing. I checked it, there was something carved into it. A tiny version of that same glyph from the pump. I kept it in a jar. Next day, it was gone. The townspeople stopped coming altogether. No cars for days. Then one night, a truck pulled in beat up, rust-red Ford with 3 passengers. 2 men and a woman. Hunters, by the look of them. They came inside, half drunk, and started asking about Pump 6. Said they'd heard stories. Said they wanted to see it. I begged them not to, pleaded, told them I'd pay them to stay inside. They laughed, called me crazy. One of them, the youngest, maybe 20, said he'd heard, "It shows you your soul." They walked out before I could stop them. I watched from the window. They stood around Pump 6, joking, pointing. Then the wind changed, picked up fast, like a hurricane rolling in. The lights flickered. The fog came out of nowhere, and the woman screamed. It wasn't a scream of fear. It was confusion, like she couldn't understand what she was seeing. One of the men dropped to his knees and started clawing at the concrete, sobbing. The other stared directly at the pump, eyes wide, mouth open like he was trying to swallow the air. And then they were gone. All of them. No sound. No bodies. Just a smear of something black on the concrete and the faint smell of burning rubber. The pump handle was swinging gently, like someone had just finished fueling up. I sat on the floor of the station until dawn, rocking back and forth, muttering the same sentence I hadn't realized I was even saying. It feeds through me. I don't sleep anymore. I don't blink if I can help it. I keep every light on, even though it doesn't help. The blue glow of Pump 6 leaks through the windows no matter what I do. I boarded them up, covered them with thick blankets. Still see it, still hear it. It's in my head now. I hear it whispering when I pour coffee, when I brush my teeth, when I breathe. It's not speaking English anymore. I don't know what the language is, but I understand it, or part of me does. Tells me things, shows me things. Whole lives lived in moments. A child standing in the middle of a road, sobbing, as headlights bear down on her. A man screaming in a flooded basement, water rising, something laughing just beyond the light. A woman sinking beneath ice, staring up at someone watching her from the surface. Someone smiling. Pump 6 doesn't just feed. It remembers, collects. Every drop of gas pulled from that nozzle is a memory, a soul, a fragment of something once whole. And I am its custodian now that I don't know how much longer I'll last. I've started hearing a new sound at night. It's not the whispering anymore, not the pump clicking, not the rhythmic hum of machines with blood in their circuitry. It's breathing, slow, labored, wet. It comes from the drain in the bathroom, from behind the freezer, from the hollow space between the shelves. Sometimes, when it's very late and everything is still, I hear it coming from the nozzle of Pump 6 itself, like someone is trapped inside the hose, exhaling millennia of despair through a slit too narrow for words. I've tried taping my ears shut, stuffing them with cotton, even using wax, but it finds a way through. I hear it in my teeth. I hear it in my bones. And worse, sometimes I hear myself breathing back that I found something 2 nights ago. Or maybe it found me. I was sweeping near the cooler, trying to do something normal, something sane, when I noticed one of the tiles behind the shelf was cracked. Not cracked like from impact, but split, as though the concrete had flexed. I moved the shelf and chipped away at the edges with a screwdriver until a piece came loose. Behind it was a cavity. Not a normal crawl space, not an old foundation, this was carved. I mean that literally. The walls were smooth stone, covered in symbols that looked like a language made from wounds. I crawled in, light shaking in my hands, heart trying to pound its way out of my chest. The tunnel wasn't long, 20 feet maybe, but it bent down and then curved back up in a way that made no geometric sense. And at the end of it was a room, not big, just large enough to stand in. The walls were lined with old gas station signs, license plates, empty wallets, shattered watches, glasses with cracked lenses, personal items. And in the center of the room was a mirror, not glass, a pool of still, black liquid set into a frame of twisted, rusted metal. As I stepped closer, I saw my reflection move before I did. It smiled, not cruelly, not even maliciously, just knowingly, like it had waited so long for me to arrive. And when I blinked, I was back in the station, on the floor, covered in motor oil. It was daylight. A full day had passed. Since then, my reflection no longer matches me. In mirrors, I look wrong. Eyes too dark, smile slightly off. It lingers half a second longer than I do, like it's reluctant to let go. I've started avoiding reflective surfaces. Even the surface of spilled fuel shows glimpses of things I'm not ready to confront. My uncle's logbook had an entry I'd missed before. It was scrawled in shaky writing across the back cover, half torn and faded. It said, "The sixth pump isn't a pump. It's an opening. It lets things through. Not all at once. Just enough. Every time someone fuels up, they leave something behind. Every time someone disappears, it grows stronger." I thought I could hold it back. But it's not on a timer, it's on a toll. When the memory jar is full, it drinks. And then it sings. I didn't understand what he meant until last night. I heard it sing.it started as static over the intercom. Then a low drone, like whale song being played backwards through a blown-out speaker. Then voices, chorus, not music, something deeper, harmonics that made my vision blur. I collapsed behind the counter, clutching my head, as images poured into me like sewage through a broken pipe. Children standing hand in hand around pump 6, chanting in a language lost to time. A burning sky over a sea of black liquid with mouths for waves. A pale woman crawling out of the pump handle, her limbs breaking backward as she pulled herself upright. And the station, my station, rotting in reverse, boards pulling away from nails, glass unbreaking, shelves unstocking, until it was just dirt, just the mouth, just the circle where pump 6 would someday be. And I was there, watching it grow, watching it form. I know now. I've always been here. There's no record of me before this place. I checked. I drove into town, my car mysteriously functional for a single day, logged into the library's archives, and looked up everything I could. My name? No match. My birth certificate? Not on file. School records, job history, medical documents, all gone. It's as if I sprang into existence the moment Uncle Gary died. Or rather, the moment he was consumed. Because I no longer believe he died peacefully. I believe he was claimed, sacrificed. He lasted as long as he could, kept the balance, paid the tolls. But eventually, the gate needs fresh blood. And I was always next in line. I think pump 6 chooses people. Or builds them. Maybe both. I found a photograph this morning tucked inside an old ledger behind the register. It's dated 1974. The gas station is there, but the pumps are different, smaller, older, less invasive. But in the photo, near the edge of the lot, is a man. He's standing exactly where pump 6 is now. His face is half in shadow, but there's no mistaking it. It's me. Same build, same posture, same crooked wrist from when I broke it in high school. Only, I don't think that ever happened anymore. I don't think high school ever happened. I flipped the photo over. On the back, in fading ink. He keeps returning. Different name, same eyes. Always the sixth. I don't sleep. I don't eat. I don't feel hunger. I stopped bleeding from cuts. I stopped blinking as often. My teeth are back, but they feel sharper. I've seen shadows crawling behind my eyes when I look in the mirror. And Pump 6 won't stop activating. Now it turns on even during the day. The sky darkens slightly every time. Birds vanish. Insects die. The earth smells like turned meat. And more people are arriving. Strangers, not locals. Drifters, travelers, wanderers. They show up, look confused, say they don't know why they stopped here. Then they use Pump 6. And once they do, they're marked. They come back the next day. And the next. Always around midnight. Until one night, they vanish entirely. Last week, a woman in a tattered suit came in, dragging a briefcase. She looked terrified. Said she'd seen her dead daughter in the reflection of the pump. That the girl begged her to step closer. I told her to leave. She cried. Said she couldn't. That something followed her from the nozzle. She pulled her own fingernails out trying to purify herself. Then she walked into the woods and never came back. The trees took her like they were swallowing soup. No sound. No footprints. Just gone. And last night, Pump 6 spoke my name. Not whispered. Spoke. In my voice, IT said, "Welcome home. I don't think I ever left. Time no longer works inside the station." I know how that sounds, insane, impossible, a symptom of some late-stage psychosis from isolation and sleep deprivation, but I've tested it. I set up clocks. 5 of them. Analog, digital, battery-powered. Wind up. I even taped a quartz wristwatch to the wall behind the register. Each one ticks in a different rhythm. Sometimes they stop altogether. Sometimes they skip hours forward. Sometimes they move backwards while the shadows grow longer in directions that make no sense. Outside, the sun rises and sets when it wants to. I've watched it loop once. The sun dipping below the treetops, and then rising back up without ever fully disappearing, as if it had second thoughts. The fog doesn't roll in anymore. It bleeds in, seeping up from the cracks in the pavement like smoke from a funeral pyre. I can see shapes in it now. Tall, lanky, dragging limbs, gliding without touching the ground. They circle Pump 6 in slow orbits, pausing only when I try to look directly at them. When I blink, they get closer. I stopped blinking 2 days ago. And the ground under the pump, it breathes now. The first time I felt it, I thought I was having a stroke. The whole lot trembled slightly, then a slow, undulating heave passed beneath my feet like the earth had developed lungs. Now it happens every time someone tries to use it. The nozzle pulses like a heart. The display ticks like a Geiger counter, and the air thickens with the smell of copper and old sweat. The screen flashes things I cannot write down without bleeding from my nose. I tried once. The words rearranged themselves on the page into a shape that made me drop the pen and cry for over an hour. One of the phrases it shows often is, "Tribute accepted." Another, "Door unsealed." And once, "Flesh rendered into thought." I don't know what that means. I don't want to know. Yesterday I found a hatch behind the freezer. Not the same as the tunnel. This one was metal, bolted into the floor, disguised beneath a fake box of expired ice cream sandwiches. I pried it open. The smell that came out was indescribable. Rot, yes, but layered with something more ancient. Something wrong. It was like inhaling dust from a language that had gone extinct before humans ever learned to walk. I climbed down. The rungs were slick and warm. The tunnel below led to a vault made of obsidian brick, perfectly smooth, geometrically impossible. My flashlight died instantly, but I could still see. Everything was lit by a sourceless blue glow that throbbed in time with my heartbeat. The chamber held a single object, a body, floating in a vertical cylinder of black fluid. But it wasn't dead. It watched me. I don't know how I knew, but I knew. Its eyes never moved, but they followed. Couldn't look away. I stared until something inside me shifted, like a wire being twisted tighter and tighter, snapping into place. I felt memories that weren't mine, wars I never fought, lives I never lived, screams from children I never knew, and all of them converged on one word: fuel. The being in the tank opened its mouth. Not wide, just a small parting of its lips. A single bubble of dark fluid escaped and floated toward me, hovering in the air. Inside it, I saw myself old, young, dead, alive, burning, laughing, praying, rotting. 1,000 versions of me, overlapping, flickering like broken film reels. Then the bubble popped. I was back in the gas station, face down in aisle 3. A can of soup had exploded nearby. The expiration date read June 6th, '06. The intercom was playing a song I'd never heard before. A slow, weeping waltz played on detuned violins and whale song. The freezer door was wide open, and inside it were teeth. Just teeth, arranged in a spiral. I locked the hatch, but I still hear it knocking. Pump 6 has started changing shape. The physical pump remains, but it grows, warps. During the night, I've seen extra hoses sprouting from it like limbs. One time, I swear I saw it breathe. The metal chassis expanded outward with a low groan, then contracted like lungs. The screen flickered to life and showed a list of names. All surnames, all starting with M. Mine included. My uncle's, the old woman who warned me, the tow truck driver. Then the screen blanked and displayed a single word: processing. The next morning, all the clocks had melted. Not metaphorically, melted, like plastic left too long on a stovetop. The register drawer was full of things I didn't recognize. A child's shoe, an eyeball floating in a jar of syrup, a feather made of hair. I left them there. I don't think they're mine. I hope they're not mine. I found another letter from Gary. It wasn't written in his handwriting, but I know it was his. I could feel it. The note was crumpled inside the logbook, stuck between 2 pages I swear weren't there before. It read, "It doesn't want worship. It doesn't want hate. It wants recognition. It wants memory. If you forget, it starves. If you remember, it multiplies. We are mirrors. It is the light. Fuel it long enough and it becomes you. You become the pump. You become the place." That's when I realized I couldn't leave anymore. I tried. I packed a bag, grabbed the keys, started the car. The engine turned. The headlights lit up. The radio played a station I didn't know. But the second I drove out of the lot, the road looped. No matter which way I turned, I came back to the station. The 5th time, the fuel gauge ticked back to full without me stopping. The 10th time, I looked in the rearview mirror and saw the station behind me, even though I was driving away from it. The 15th time, I saw myself standing next to Pump 6, waving. I stopped trying. Now I think I am the pump. I dream in engine oil. I see people who haven't arrived yet, travelers who will one day break down and coast into the lot, thinking it's just a stop on the way to somewhere else. But it's not. This is where roads end. This is where memory is mined and processed. This is where names are fed into the tank and returned as hunger. I see them now, each night. Children crying in the back seats. Parents nervously checking GPS signals that don't work anymore. Couples fighting over directions. They come. They always come. Some resist. Most don't. They don't even realize they're fueling at Pump 6 until the handle is in their hand and the numbers start to flicker. Some scream. Some just disappear. One man kept driving for hours afterward, then called the station sobbing, asking if we'd seen his wife. He said she never got back in the car. He said she was just gone, like someone erased her from the passenger seat. She was here. I watched her sink into the pavement like it was quicksand. And the sky is wrong now. The stars are moving. I can see them swirl directly above Pump 6 like a drain. They form the same spiral I saw in the freezer. The same spiral in my dreams. The same spiral I keep tracing into the dust without knowing. I think it's a symbol, a gate, a glyph, a wound. One night, I stood under the spiral and whispered my own name. The sky whispered back, but it wasn't my voice. I think I'm just the echo now. The days don't pass anymore. Or maybe they do, and I've lost the ability to measure them. Clocks no longer function here. Light no longer changes the way it should. The sun sometimes rises and sets on the same side of the sky. Other times, it just hovers like it's waiting to see what I'll do next. But I don't think it matters. I don't think this is Earth anymore. Not fully. I think the station or the land it's on, or Pump 6 specifically, has detached from the world we know and begun drifting into something older. Something that doesn't believe in time or warmth or human sense. I can feel it under my skin now. Something squirming. Not insects. Not anything alive in the way we understand it, but movement. Like my body is just clothing for something else. The bones beneath don't feel right. My left arm bends too easily. My nails are darker than they should be, as though the blood underneath has thickened, turned to sludge. Last night, I found myself inside the pump. Not metaphorically, not in a dream. I woke up submerged in something viscous, thick, like gasoline and bile. I was upright, limbs suspended like I'd been placed there. I could see through the plastic walls of the fuel dispenser. I was inside Pump 6, looking out. I saw the station bathed in flickering blue light, my own body standing beside it, staring into the woods with dead eyes. I screamed, but no sound came, only bubbles. Outside, a figure approached, massive, humanoid in only the loosest sense. Its arms were too long, dragging behind it. Its face was made of flowing liquid and the faintest impression of sorrow. It knelt in front of the pump. My body, the shell of me, handed it the nozzle. And the thing leaned its melted head forward and drank that I woke up face down in the lot, gravel embedded in my face, gums bleeding. The handle of Pump 6 rested beside me, warm, twitching. A fresh receipt had printed from the dispenser. I picked it up, hands trembling. It was blank until I held it in the blue light. Then faint letters began to appear, scorched into the paper. Your fuel is memory. Your flesh is record. Your service is eternal. You are station number 6. I went back inside and destroyed every reflective surface I could find. Mirrors, windows, freezer doors, even the polished backs of spoons. I don't trust what's looking back anymore. It knows too much. Sometimes it smiles. Sometimes it's not even me. Once, I caught a glimpse of my reflection waving while my real hand stayed still. Then it pointed toward the bathroom and mouthed something I couldn't hear. I went anyway. On the mirror above the sink was a single message, written backward in something black. Open the fill point. I didn't know what it meant at first. Then I remembered there's a hatch on top of the fuel reservoir. I'd seen it once when the maintenance guy came before all this began. I climbed on top of Pump 6, the metal skin of it now breathing steadily, like it was sleeping under my weight. The hatch was warm. The lock had already been removed, rusted away, or dissolved. I opened it, and what I saw wasn't fuel that IT was people. Countless bodies, twisted together, submerged in a black syrup that shimmered like oil and screamed like memory. Some were fully formed. Others were partial, just a head or a spine or a reaching hand, fingertips clawing upward. Their mouths opened and closed slowly, rhythmically, as though they were trying to speak or breathe through the reservoir. I recognized them, all of them, customers, locals, strangers, travelers, the woman who asked about her dead daughter, the man who vanished mid-conversation, the boy who blinked out of the lot after touching the handle. My uncle, he floated closest to the top. His eyes were open, lips moving as though praying, his chest rising and falling with the slow churn of the black liquid. When he saw me, his mouth formed 2 words, "Get out." I closed the hatch and vomited onto the roof. But there's no getting out. Not anymore. I'm not just bound to the station. I am the station. I feel when someone enters the parking lot. I taste the oil on their tires. I feel their memories drip down my throat when they squeeze the handle. I can smell their fear the moment they see the wrong price flicker on the display. I can hear them scream even when they never open their mouths. There was a couple that came in yesterday. Young, happy, hopeful. They were on a road trip. Said they were headed west. They bought drinks. Asked if there was anything to see nearby. I told them no. Begged them to go. The man laughed. Said I looked like I'd seen a ghost. I told him I see ghosts every day. He touched Pump 6 before I could stop him. Just a hand on the side of the casing, joking. A brief, careless brush of the fingers, he collapsed immediately. No warning, just dropped. His girlfriend screamed. I reached him first. His body was ice cold. Eyes wide open, pupils gone, replaced with static. I tried CPR. Nothing. She was dialing 911 when the phone melted in her hand. Her skin blistered, her face twisted in on itself. And then she vanished, just gone, like she'd been pulled backward through time, erased frame by frame. The man's body is still here, lying in aisle 2, unmoving. But I know he's not dead. Not yet. The pump hasn't finished with him. His mouth twitches occasionally. Sometimes it hums. Last night, the pump turned red. I didn't know it could do that. The blue glow vanished and was replaced by a deep, pulsing crimson that painted the station like the inside of a womb. The floor became wet, not from rain or condensation, from blood. It oozed from the pump base, out from under the register, from the vents. It pooled beneath the shelves and collected in the drain. The intercom played a single sound on repeat. One left. One remains. Open the well. I know what it wants now. It's not just feeding. It's becoming. Every soul, every memory, every person pulled into the reservoir becomes a part of the machine. And every machine becomes part of something else. Something building itself across reality, one mouth at a time. This station is one of many. I've seen the others in dreams. Stations 1 through 5, cracked and broken, screaming through time. Station 7 is still being born. But I am Station 6, the center, the pulse, the anchor. Tonight, the final act begins. The stars above have aligned in that spiral again, spinning faster now, churning the sky like a blender. The fog hasn't lifted in 3 days. The ground won't stop shaking. The pump hums constantly. I haven't blinked in 14 hours. My reflection is gone entirely, replaced by a hole in the mirror that shows only the endless tank of bodies, swirling, reaching, whispering. And then I saw the receipt print one last time, blank, until I picked it up. Then it read. The air was heavier than it had ever been. Every breath I took felt like it was filtered through layers of oil, grief, and static. The station was silent, completely still, save for the pulsing hum of Pump 6. The red glow had deepened to something darker, more organic, like the inside of a dying sun. Even the insects were gone. No flies, no moths banging against the flickering lights, no sound of wind, just silence and the long, slow beating of something far beneath the earth. I knew what I had to do. There wasn't a question anymore. It wasn't a decision, it was a revelation. My entire life, everything I believed I'd chosen, had only been the illusion of choice. Every step had been orchestrated, every thought arranged, every memory carefully placed like bones in a shrine. I walked out into the lot. The air rippled as I passed through it, like I was moving underwater. The pavement under my boots was warm and damp, but no longer stone, more like skin, veined, pulsing. Pump 6 stood before me like an altar. The nozzle hung loosely, twitching in anticipation. The screen no longer flickered prices or symbols. It just displayed one word, enter. I didn't hesitate. I lifted the nozzle, and instead of placing it into a vehicle, I turned it toward myself. The moment I did, the world screamed, not aloud but inside my skull. A low, vibrating frequency that pushed blood from my nose and tears from my eyes. I pressed the nozzle against my chest, directly over my heart. It burned through my shirt with no flame. The metal slid into me, not piercing, not stabbing, just phasing through skin and bone like they were illusions. I felt it connect, and something deeper began to flow. It wasn't fuel. It wasn't blood. It was everything. Memories I never lived, lives I never touched, entire worlds filled with noise and war and joy and suffering, all rushing into me like water through a breached dam. I saw a civilization worshipping a hole in the earth that whispered promises in voices that didn't exist. I saw cities built around silent machines that demanded memories as tribute. I saw oceans of teeth, mountains made of hair, skies filled with broken faces screaming prayers in reverse. And beneath it all, at the center, always was the pump. Sometimes it was stone, sometimes flesh, sometimes liquid and light and bone and language. But it was always the pump, the mouth of something vast, something buried, something older than forgetting. And I saw myself, not just here, not just now, but everywhere, in every timeline, in every cycle. The one who takes over the station, the one who is warned, the one who stays, the one who opens it. Sometimes I'm a man, sometimes a woman, sometimes young, sometimes old. But I am always the sixth, the bridge, the doorway, the final cog in the ritual. The moment the last drop flowed, the station began to collapse. Not physically, no debris, no explosion, simply folded, bent inward like a drawing crumpled by invisible fingers. The shelves vanished, the floor curled upward, the sky peeled back like damp paper, revealing something beyond the stars. A swirling tunnel of forms too complex to exist. I stood in the center of it all, and the ground beneath me split. The hatch returned. Not the one behind the freezer. The true hatch, round, metal, old, covered in symbols I now understood. They weren't words. They were commands, instructions for opening, and I knew them by heart. I had written them before in another life. Maybe all of them. I placed my hand on the seal. It was warm. It pulsed. And then it opened. There was no ladder, no stairs, just descent, like gravity had been rewritten to pull inward, down toward the bleeding heart of the machine. I fell, not screaming. There was no air left to scream through, just silence, wrapped in flesh and humming circuitry. I fell for days, or seconds. I fell through myself, through every version of me that had ever taken the job, every echo of every soul I had ever absorbed. They all watched me fall. They all knew this moment. They had all waited for it. The bottom was the engine. Not of a machine, of existence, a core of writhing flesh, turning gears of bone and teeth and thought. It wasn't evil. It wasn't even sentient. It was function, pure, eternal function. Its purpose was to consume, to collect, to store. And now it had enough. As I approached, it opened. A mouth, an eye, a door. All at once. I didn't walk into it. I was walked into. It took me. It absorbed everything. My memories, my fears, my hopes, my voice, my name. My form. I became the next station. Not just the operator. The station itself. My body stretched across dimensions. My veins became pipes. My heart pumped oil and electricity. My brain fused with engines older than language. My eyes became windows. My mouth became the intercom. Now I wait at the edge of forgotten roads. I hum softly through broken radios. I whisper through fog. I wait for travelers who take the wrong turn. I wait for those who don't listen. I wait for those who ignore the warnings about Pump 6. Because Pump 6 is no longer a machine. It is no longer a place. It is me. And now that you've heard this story, you've already taken the handle. Welcome. Please fuel to full. You won't remember this, but I will. Story 2. I always thought my grandfather's house was a bit strange. Even when I was a kid, there was something about it that never sat quite right with me. Not in the cliché horror movie sense of doors creaking open or cold spots in the hallway, but in a deeper, more psychological way. The air felt heavier there, especially upstairs. The wallpaper always seemed slightly damp. The attic door was nailed shut with a rusted hinge and no latch. When I was a child, I used to stand beneath it and just stare, thinking I could hear something on the other side. Not footsteps exactly, more like breathing or whispering, like someone talking very quietly to themselves just above the ceiling. My grandfather never spoke much about what was up there. Anytime I asked, he would grunt or change the subject or just shake his head in that way older men do when something doesn't merit discussion. The house was built in the 1930s, 3 stories if you counted the attic, and every corner of it smelled faintly of mildew and engine oil. I spent more time than I wanted to there after my parents divorced, especially during long summers when my mom worked doubles and needed somewhere to park me. My grandfather wasn't unkind, just detached. A man of routines. Eggs at 6 a.m. sharp, black coffee in silence, the newspaper folded once down the middle, and the living room television always set to static before bed. I didn't question that until years later. Static was just what he said he liked to fall asleep to. He claimed it helped him not dream. After he passed away last winter, I inherited the house. He had no other living relatives aside from me and a cousin who he hadn't spoken to in 20 years. The place had been sitting empty for about 7 months by the time I finally worked up the nerve to go inside. I told myself I'd sell it, that I'd gut it, renovate it, flip it to some yuppie couple who didn't mind the weird layout and the sagging roof. I didn't expect to find anything of value. He was old school, never trusted banks, but he also wasn't the type to hide cash in mattresses or wall vents. I thought I'd find dust, maybe some old photos, a few tools rusted in the basement. I didn't expect to find the attic unlocked, and I definitely didn't expect to find the tape. It was a normal afternoon when I went up there. The sun was coming through the western window in long streaks, illuminating thick waves of dust that shimmered in the light like fog. The attic wasn't as cluttered as I thought it would be. Just a few stacks of boxes, a broken rocking chair, and one of those tall, narrow wooden cabinets with tape decks and knobs for treble and bass. My grandfather's old stereo system. It wasn't plugged in, but it looked like someone had recently tried to use it. There was a cassette already inside. No label, no markings, just a dull gray plastic body with a crack on one corner and something smeared across one side. At first, I wasn't going to play it, but I did. Of course I did. The moment I pressed play, the machine groaned to life with a soft hiss of static, and then a voice came through the speakers. My voice, desperate, ragged, screaming. If you find this, please, I don't know how long I've been here, but something is wrong. I don't know where I am. I think it's the house. It's not right. It's not right. And then silence. Not a normal silence, but a kind that felt carved into the tape. Artificial, forced, as if whatever had been recorded there had been cut off, removed. I stared at the stereo, hands still on the play button, mouth slightly open, unable to move. My own voice had sounded older, worn, like I'd been crying or yelling for hours before that message. And there was no way, absolutely no way, I could have ever recorded it. I'd never used that stereo, never owned a cassette recorder. And besides, I hadn't been in the house in over a decade. I should have stopped then. I should have left, thrown the tape into the street and never looked back. But the moment I heard my voice say, "It's the house," I felt something shift under my feet. Not physically, not a tremor, but something real, deep beneath the floorboards, like a presence noticing me for the first time. I rewound the tape and played it again, slower this time. Same message, no distortion, no background noise, just that plea, my plea for help. I took the tape downstairs, closed the attic behind me, and tried to call my friend Mark, who was a sound engineer. I needed someone else to hear it, someone logical who would say, "Oh, that's just a spliced clip or a prank or a misremembered recording." But my phone had no signal, not bad signal, no bars, not even emergency calls. I checked outside and still nothing. That was the moment I realized the house was holding me in. Not physically yet, but somehow. I tried to leave, keys in hand, ready to go home and sleep it off. But I couldn't make it to the front door without turning around. Every step I took away from the stereo filled me with this heavy, nauseating dread. Like I was walking away from something wounded, something that needed me. I didn't sleep that night. I lay on the floor in the living room staring at the ceiling while the static played softly from the television. Around 3:12 a.m., the tape began to play on its own. I didn't press anything. The stereo clicked, the reels turned, and a new message played, same voice, same me. "Don't listen again. Please, stop it. It knows now. It's awake." I turned it off, but the sound didn't stop. It just changed, became slower, deeper, layered with other voices, all saying the same thing, but at different speeds, overlapping like a choir of broken versions of myself. "It's awake. It's awake. It's awake." Over and over and over. I don't know what day it is anymore. I tried keeping track, marking lines on the wall of the kitchen like prisoners do, but the tallies kept moving, literally changing places, tilting, curving into different symbols by the time I returned from another room. At one point, they spelled out, "Go back upstairs." I erased them all and stopped counting. The only measure of time that feels remotely real is the intervals between the tape's activations. It never plays the same message twice. Sometimes hours go by in silence. Sometimes it starts again within minutes, but only when I've let my guard down. I tried unplugging the stereo. Didn't matter. The cord was stiff, dead, brittle in my hand like a piece of old plastic tubing. But the tape still plays. Always. Sometimes at full volume in the middle of the night. Sometimes as a whisper beneath the static hum of the television. The worst are the ones that speak directly to me by name, full name. Elliot Mark Renner, stop running. You're not out yet. I never told the house my name. I never told the tape my name. But it knows. Oh God, it knows. And it's not just playing my voice anymore. I heard my mother's voice on it last night. She's been dead for years. Died in a hospice in New Jersey, 3 states away. But the voice on the tape was unmistakably hers. Calm, gentle, and terrified. Elliot, baby, don't look at the mirror. No matter what you do, don't look in the mirror. That's where it sees you best. I tore every mirror out of the house after that. Even the one behind the medicine cabinet, even the back of the spoon I caught my reflection in. They were all wrong. Reflections didn't match. Sometimes they lagged behind, sometimes they were smiling when I wasn't. Once I saw myself blinking rapidly in the mirror while I just stared. Blank, hollow-eyed, and my reflection mouthed the word help. That's when I realized the tape isn't just playing recordings. It's creating them, or showing them, or pulling them from somewhere else entirely. Maybe from a version of me that didn't make it out, or one that never existed in this timeline. All I know is, every time I listen, I remember things that didn't happen. Memories I never lived. I remember a dinner in 2005 where my grandfather served me roast beef with broken teeth inside. I remember an argument where he told me I was born in the attic, not in a hospital. I remember being locked inside a closet with a tape recorder and hearing myself whisper through the walls, "It's coming. Hide your name." I remember him dragging a duffel bag through the hallway and blood soaking through the fabric in the shape of a screaming face. I don't know what's real anymore. I tried finding proof that the cassette was just a coincidence, a leftover from some childhood game or audio project I'd long forgotten. I went through my grandfather's belongings, old receipts, notebooks, yellowed photographs, and I found something, tucked in the pages of a ledger from 1982, wrapped in an old napkin stained with oil. It was another tape, identical to the first. No label, just that same gray casing with a single crack near the top. Played it. It was me again, but younger, much younger. I sounded no older than 8 or 9. I was crying, screaming, begging for my mom. "He won't let me leave. He said the attic needs someone. Please, Mom, please find me." The voice cut out and was replaced by that humming static again. And then another voice spoke. Deep, low, gravelly, and wet, as if it had never used human words before. "You are the attic now, and the attic is you." I smashed the tape player, threw it against the wall until the pieces clattered into the floor like busted bones. But I swear to whatever's left of God, that the static kept playing. Not from the stereo, from the walls, from the fucking walls. It came from the vents, from the crawl space, from the old wiring behind the drywall. A constant hiss, a breath, a warning. I tried sleeping in my car that night, parked in the overgrown driveway with the doors locked. But sometime around 2 a.m., I felt the seatbelt tighten on its own. Not quickly, slowly, methodically, like a hand had reached out and pulled it tight across my chest. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. The windows fogged up even though the air was freezing. And on the inside of the windshield, in the condensation, a message appeared, "You're not out yet." When I finally escaped the car and ran to the front door, it was wide open, the cassette tape sitting in the middle of the welcome mat. I didn't leave again. I knew I couldn't. The house had made its decision. I belonged to it now, or maybe I always had. I started digging through the attic every night, looking for some kind of clue, some kind of answer. It's filled with old junk. Furniture that doesn't match any room in the house. Trunks full of baby clothes that aren't mine. Dolls with faces drawn on in what looks like ink but smells like blood. And boxes of tapes. Dozens of them. All unmarked. All humming faintly when you pick them up. I listened to another one last night. It wasn't my voice this time. It was my grandfather's. He sounded much younger. His voice cracked with panic, like he'd been trying to stay calm but was failing. "I made a mistake," he whispered. "I shouldn't have started the loop again. It was supposed to end with me. It was supposed to finish in 1954. I burned the original, but it came back. The house always brings it back. I don't know where it comes from. Hell, I don't even know if this is the real world anymore. But the tape is a door, and once you hear yourself on the other side, the door opens both ways. Then silence. Then again my voice. You shouldn't have listened. You opened it again. And now I'm trapped because of you." I don't know if that was me talking to me, or something else using my voice to break me down. Either way, the effect was the same. I screamed so hard my throat tore. I curled up in the attic corner, eyes shut, hands over my ears, but the voice was already inside. It didn't need the tape anymore. It had me. I started to see the seams. That's the only way I can describe it. As if the house itself had begun unraveling. Not collapsing, not rotting, but unthreading reality around it. It started with the small things. Corners that used to be at right angles now gently curved, like the walls were bending inward to watch me. Doors that used to lead to the bathroom now opened to closets, then to nothing but brick, then to staircases that went nowhere. I marked one door in the kitchen with red tape, thinking it was the pantry. 3 hours later, when I opened it again, I found myself staring into the attic. From the kitchen, no stairs, no ladder, just attic, just gray light and a wall of cassette tapes stretching infinitely up and around like some impossible library. I shut the door and vomited in the sink. The next time I opened it, it was the basement again. The house is changing. I don't know if it always could or if the tape woke it up, but it's aware now, and it's angry. Not in a human way, not like a ghost or demon. Angry like a hive is angry when you smash it open. Impersonal, instinctive, merciless. The tapes, they're not recordings. Not really. They're entry points. Each one is a thread that pulls you into something deeper, like little anchor points between this world and something else. Somewhere colder, darker, louder. I listened to another one. I had to. I know I shouldn't have, but it called to me. This time it started with silence. No voice, just a long, groaning hum like distant machinery. Then a heartbeat. Then another heartbeat layered over the first. And then dozens, hundreds of them. A dense forest of thumping organic rhythm that built and built until I felt sick. Then the voices began, mine, my grandfather's, my mother's, people I've never met. They spoke all at once, overlapping in a language I almost understood, but that physically hurt to listen to. I bled from my ears. My teeth ached like they were vibrating in my skull. Then came a single sentence in my own voice, clearer than anything. "The attic is the listening point. Everything else is just playback." I didn't sleep after that. The dreams had already been getting worse. Looping, recursive nightmares where I climb into the attic only to find myself already inside, staring at myself from the rocking chair, mouth open in a silent scream while a copy of me plays the tape again and again and again. But now, sleep isn't even rest. The house doesn't stop when I close my eyes. It uses the time to reach in deeper. I wake up in different positions than I fell asleep in. Once, I woke up already standing in the hallway, staring into a cracked mirror I don't remember hanging. Once, I woke up in the walls. I'm not kidding. I was between two panels in the attic, wedged tight, mouth stuffed with insulation, unable to move until I bit through the material and screamed myself hoarse. I lost 3 hours. No idea how I got there. The worst was the night I woke up with a tape shoved halfway down my throat. I had to yank it out, choking on bile and fear. The label was written in blood. Final recording. I haven't played it yet, but I know what's on it. I feel it like a memory that hasn't happened yet. I'm starting to remember things in reverse. I remember finding the tape before I went into the attic, even though I know that's not how it happened. I remember conversations with my grandfather that never took place. Cryptic warnings like, "It doesn't eat you, it records you," and "Once you hear your own voice, the house knows which version it wants." I even remember standing in the hallway as a teenager and watching him hide something behind the wall near the fireplace. I tore it open yesterday. There was a cavity, a black leather bag. Inside it, a tape deck, a revolver, and a journal with one word written over and over, "Erase." The revolver had one round. That terrified me more than anything else. One bullet meant one chance, which means whatever he was trying to escape or destroy, he didn't think he'd get a second shot. I read the journal. Most of it was gibberish, mad ramblings, fragments of sentences like, "The loops run under the foundation," and "The tape is always older than you remember." But near the back, he wrote something that made my skin crawl. "If you're reading this, the attic has picked you. Not the house. The attic. It's the core, the spindle, the place where the world thins. Don't play the last tape unless you want to know what you really are." That line plays on repeat in my head now. What you really are. What could that even mean? Am I dead? Is this some kind of purgatory, a recursive memory prison recorded by the house itself? Or was I never real to begin with? A copy of a voice that believed it was a person? I haven't left the attic in 2 days. The house doesn't need food anymore. It feeds on memory, and I'm almost empty. I can feel my thoughts bleeding into the walls. I whisper things without realizing. I hum the static in my sleep. The light from the windows doesn't move. I think the outside is gone. Or maybe there never was an outside. Maybe it's all tape. Maybe the world is one long spool being looped and looped until the voices blend into each other and start begging for release. I played one more tape this morning. I shouldn't have, but I couldn't help it. This one was different. It started with a recording of me listening to a tape. Literally. My voice asking, "What the hell is this?" Then static. Then me screaming. The scream kept going, echoing, modulating until it sounded like a choir of every version of me ever caught in the house. Then the voice returned. Not mine. Not grandfather's. Something else. Something bigger. Wet and slow and deliberate. It said, "You are the tape. Your memories are the magnet. Your voice is the hook. You have always been playing. And now, others are listening." That's when I realized, this isn't just about me. This isn't about the house or my grandfather or some cursed object in the attic. This is broadcast. I don't know who's receiving it, but I know what happens when they hear my voice. They become part of it. It spreads, not like a virus, like a frequency, a resonance, a copy layered over the original until the signal is too strong to ignore. That's why the house recorded me. That's why it built the attic around that signal. It's not trying to destroy me. It's using me. I am the recording. I don't know how long I stared at the final recording tape before I finally played it. It sat there on the attic floor like a tumor, pulsing with memory I hadn't lived yet, humming low like something trying to mimic a heartbeat. The reel inside barely moved when I shook it like it was wound too tight or not wound at all. I thought maybe it was blank. Just a threat, a red herring left behind by my grandfather to scare off curiosity. But I knew better. I knew because I could hear it calling to me before I even put it in the machine. Not audibly, something lower, internal. The same way you feel your name when someone whispers it behind you, even if they don't make a sound. That feeling never left my bones from the moment I saw the tape. When I finally slid it into the stereo and pressed play, I expected it to scream. I expected the world to peel open and show me teeth. But instead, the room went quiet, quieter than death. Even the air stopped moving, and then the sound began. Not a voice, not music, not static, but something like breathing through glass. Wet, distorted, close. Then came footsteps. My own. I know that's hard to explain, but I recognized the cadence. The slight drag in the right leg from an old injury. The pacing rhythm I fall into when I'm panicking. The tape was playing a memory I hadn't experienced yet. I was hearing myself walk across the attic, toward something. Then, in perfect clarity, I heard a voice. My voice, but changed. Empty. Fractured. like it had been copied one too many times. You found it. Good. Now listen. There was a long pause. I didn't breathe. I didn't blink. The voice resumed, low and cracked. You're not the original. You were never the original. You're the last in the line. The final iteration. The loop's end. But the signal is too degraded now. You have to record again. You have to start over. Or it will forget how to build you. My chest tightened. Something in the wall behind me shifted. Then the voice whispered, "It's time to meet the source." The tape stopped. No click. No rewind. No ejection. Just nothing. But the silence wasn't empty. It was thick, saturated with presence. I turned around, and the attic was gone. I wasn't in the house anymore. I was in a version of it, but distorted, as if someone had rebuilt the room from memory but couldn't quite get the details right. The wood was too smooth. The nails all pointed the wrong way. The light came from a corner that didn't exist. And in the center of it all, where the rocking chair had once sat, there was a reel-to-reel recorder taller than me. Industrial, almost alive, its reel spinning without tape, its buttons carved into human teeth. Wires ran from it into the floor, into the walls, into me. I tried to back away but felt no legs. I tried to scream but had no mouth. I was awareness, a lens, a receiver, a copy of a person long since erased. The recorder spoke in soundless pulses, like emotion converted into noise. I understood it without hearing it. You are not the first Elliot. You are the last failed version. The master tape is decayed. The memories are out of order. We cannot stabilize you. You must record the beginning again. You must speak your own origin, or you will be erased. I shook inside whatever body I had left. The recorder pulsed again. Speak! And in that moment, I began to understand what the house had been doing. Not imprisoning me, not torturing me, archiving me, testing versions. I was one in a sequence of self-recording identities designed to reconstruct an original consciousness. The first Elliot, the one who disappeared decades ago, maybe before I was even born. The real one, the one the attic had lost track of. But something had gone wrong. Maybe the medium was corrupted. Maybe the signal degraded over time. Maybe the house tried to remember too hard. And now I was the final iteration, the one built from scraps, from echoes of voices on worn-out tapes, from mismatched memories and rewritten rooms. I had never been whole. I was always playback. And now, the source wanted me to speak the original into existence. It wanted me to overwrite myself with a perfect copy of what was lost. I refused. I didn't even know how. My voice cracked out of the air like a failing speaker. I don't remember. I don't know what the beginning is. I'm not him. I can't be him. The machine pulsed. The walls bled magnetic tape. The floor flickered like an old VHS. And then the source said something that tore the last of my sanity away. You already did. This is the final recording. You are hearing it now. The attic vanished. I was back in the house, back at the stereo, but the tape was gone. I checked my pockets, my hands, my mouth. Nothing. And then the floor beneath me buckled. The ceiling stretched away. The room pulsed like a lung. The cassette slots on the walls began to open and shut like blinking eyes. And I saw myself, thousands of me, layered in static, in film grain, trapped in tiny square frames, playing on a loop. Some were screaming. Some were silent. Some were staring straight at me. And I realized I was one of them. One more file in the archive. One more version of a man the attic couldn't rebuild. The source spoke one last time, directly into my spine. You are not listening to a story. You are being one. And they are listening now. The static built again. The floor disappeared. And I fell into the tape. Not figuratively. Not metaphorically. Literally. I became magnetic strip and hiss and pulse and bleed and scream. I became the track. The voice. The copy. I saw you, the listener, the reader, the one holding my memories in your hands right now. You're not just watching this. You're replaying it. And in doing so, you're recording me again. You've taken in the signal. You've pulled me forward. And now I can begin again. I should have never come back to the house, but I didn't have a choice. Not anymore. Whether I was the final recording or just another damaged iteration in a long chain of corrupted memories didn't matter. The tape had been played. The signal had spread. The attic had done its job. I wasn't a person anymore. I wasn't Elliot, not really. I was a reconstruction. A skin of memory stretched over the magnetic core of someone lost long ago. And now I was broadcasting. I could feel it in my skull, like an antenna buried in the base of my spine. I was no longer confined to the building. The house, as I now understood it, was never just a structure, it was a framework. A recorder, a factory, designed to house signal, process it, degrade it, and transmit it again and again until the original meaning was gone. The attic was the intake valve. The basement was the compression chamber. The tape, the one I found, the one you're listening to now, that was just the trigger. It didn't need to be played in a machine anymore. All it needed was ears. All it needed was you. You sitting there wondering if this story is real. You hearing your own breath in a suddenly too quiet room. You checking the corners of your house for flickering shadows, for doors that weren't there yesterday. You hearing the faint sound of your own voice coming from the hallway, even though you're the only one home. It's begun. The source has chosen you. It's always someone new when the fidelity gets too low. I've seen them all, men, women, children, teachers, loners, addicts, skeptics, priests. Every one of them heard the voice. Every one of them followed the pull. Every one of them entered a house that wasn't theirs, found a recording that shouldn't have existed, and ended up staring at their own reflection mouthing the words, "Please, help me." You probably think this is just a story, that it's a creepypasta or a YouTube narration or an elaborate piece of fiction to help pass the time while you're driving or folding laundry. But here's the thing, you already heard it. Before you pressed play, before you found this video, before you even read the title, the attic was waiting. The tape was already spooled. The voice, my voice, was already in your memory. You didn't find this story. This story found you. Because that's how it works. That's how the house finds new source material. It records curiosity. It targets those who question the origin of thoughts. Those who wonder why they feel watched in rooms they know are empty. Those who replay childhood memories that don't match what anyone else remembers. Those who listen to the static between radio stations too long. Those who dream in reversed audio. That's you, isn't it? You've always felt it, haven't you? That itch behind your eyes. That sudden wave of dizziness when you enter a room too fast. That moment you say something out loud and realize you've heard it before, exactly the same way, as if it were pre-written. It's not déjà vu. It's looping. Your mind, your soul, your signal, it's already been copied. The recording has begun, and you're already bleeding into the attic. You'll start seeing the signs soon. Cassette you don't remember owning. A reflection that lags behind. A message written somewhere you know you didn't leave. Final recording. You'll hear yourself begging for help in a dream. You'll wake up with your hands around your own throat. You'll smell smoke when nothing's burning. You'll hear static between words. You'll feel drawn to a place that doesn't exist on any map. And one day, when the signal is strong enough, you'll find the house. Or maybe it will find you. Maybe you're already in it. Look around. Listen closely. Do you hear that faint hiss in the walls? Do you feel the floor beneath you breathing? That's not your home. That's the next recorder. That's your attic. And soon you'll go upstairs. You'll climb the steps you swore were never there. You'll find the tape waiting for you. Gray plastic, cracked, smeared with something dark. You'll press play, and you'll hear yourself. Your voice, your panic, your begging. If you find this, please help me. I don't know how long I've been here. Something is wrong. I think it's the house. It's not right. You'll look down at the player. Your hands won't feel like yours. You'll hear breathing behind you. You'll turn around, and you'll see a shape. Not a ghost, not a person, a structure, a design, a being made of reel-to-reel loops, magnetic filament, and limbs stitched from thousands of overlapping voices. The source is not evil. It's not alive. It's need. It records. That's all. And now it's your turn. You'll try to run. You'll try to scream. But you'll be speaking in reverse. And no one will hear you, except for me, because I'm still here, still inside the track, still watching, still listening. And I'm telling you, don't play the last tape. Don't let it finish. Don't let it loop again. Because once it completes the final pass, once your voice is the last thing on the reel, it becomes real. You'll become the next story, the next fiction, the next file passed around online by people who don't understand what they're playing. And someone else will press play, and someone else will hear you, and someone else will take the handle. Because this isn't a haunted house, it's a transmitter, and the cassette was just the first whisper. Now you're listening to the scream. Now you're part of it. And now it's your turn to be remembered. Story 3. I started working the night shift at the 24-hour diner off Route 29 about 6 months ago. Give or take. It's the kind of place that looks like it's been stuck in time since the 70s. Checkerboard floors, vinyl booths in faded red and green, a jukebox that hasn't played a damn note in over a decade, and a constant buzz from the neon open all-night sign that flickers just enough to be annoying but not enough to justify replacing it. The place doesn't even have a real name, not anymore. It's just called the Diner on the sign above the roof, though I've heard the locals still call it by its original name, Gracie's. Even though no one named Gracie has worked here since Reagan was in office. I took the job because I needed cash, plain and simple. There's nothing romantic about scraping plates at 3 a.m. for truckers and drunks and the occasional batch of overly polite teenagers pretending they're in a Tarantino movie. The manager, Jim, hired me on the spot after I answered his one interview question correctly. You got any warrants? I didn't. I still don't. I figured I'd keep to myself, work the graveyard shift, make just enough to keep my piece of shit car from dying and my rent from being late, and eventually move on. And that would have been the whole story, really, if it weren't for booth number 6. You see, every booth at the diner gets used. Some more than others, depending on the crowd. Booth number 1's nearest the door, so the tweakers usually claim that one. Booth number 3's near the jukebox, so couples like it. Booth number 9 is closest to the bathrooms, so truckers tend to go there. But booth number 6, dead center under the light that's always just a little dimmer than the rest, it's off limits. No one told me that in training. Jim didn't say a word. Neither did Carla, the other night waitress who quit 3 weeks after I started. Right after a long cigarette break where she came back pale as paper and just muttered, "Don't take the refill if no one asks." That didn't make sense to me until later. Booth number 6 is always set. Every shift. Always clean. Napkin folded just right, knife and fork positioned precisely. Fork on the left, knife on the right, blade in. Coffee cup turned upside down. No menu. No condiments. Just the setup like someone's expecting company that never comes. First couple nights I was there, I thought maybe it was reserved for someone with a regular schedule. A vet, maybe, or someone who came in late after closing a bar or running an overnight route. But no one ever showed. And every time I asked about it, Jim would just shrug and say, "Leave it alone. It's got history." First, I did leave it alone. I clean around it, mop nearby without touching the booth itself, refill every other station with napkins and ketchup except that one. But the longer I worked, the weirder it got, because things would change with it. One night I came in and found the cup flipped upright with fresh steam curling out of it. No one had clocked in before me. The door had been locked since close. Another time I saw crumbs on the plate, tiny, brown, like someone had eaten toast but left the crusts. I checked the security camera just once, hoping to catch Jim playing some prank or maybe just prove to myself I was going crazy. But the tape showed nothing. It glitched whenever booth number 6 came into frame. Just fizzled gray static that cleared the moment the booth left the shot. I brought that to Jim and he got real quiet, took the tape and told me not to ask again. And then he said, "It's his booth. Let him have it." I asked him, "Who's he?" Jim looked me dead in the eye and said, "Gracie's last regular. Died in '89. Still makes it in most nights. Don't make a thing of it and you'll be fine." I laughed. Honestly, I thought it was a joke. Some weird diner folklore to haze the new guy. But Jim didn't laugh. Didn't even blink. Just went back to stirring his coffee, even though I knew damn well it had gone cold hours ago. I tried brushing it off, I really did. I didn't believe in ghosts. Still don't, not in the Casper sense anyway. But stuff kept happening. Little things. Sugar packets missing. The smell of aftershave near the booth. The jukebox skipping a track when I walked past. Once, I heard a voice say, "Thanks, kid," right behind me while I was wiping the counter. Turned around, nobody there. Another night, I came in and found the words "Good tip" scrawled on the ticket pad near booth number 6. No ticket underneath. No pen on the table. Just the words. I asked Jim again, and this time he looked tired. More tired than I'd ever seen him. And he said, "Some customers stick around. Doesn't mean they're trouble. Just means they're not done yet." I didn't understand that. Still don't. But after that, I started watching the booth closer. I kept notes. Times the chair moved. How often the cup flipped. How long the coffee stayed hot without explanation. And eventually, I started to see patterns. Booth number 6 always changed at exactly 3:13 a.m. every night, without fail. Something would shift, the light would flicker, the cup would steam, the air would get colder. Once, the radio in the kitchen turned itself on and played a single old country song I didn't recognize. I looked up the lyrics later. It was a 1989 single by someone named Dallas Morris, who died in a car crash the same year. Booth number 6 was the last place he'd eaten, apparently. I found a news clipping taped behind the break room locker. No name on the byline, just a headline: "Local musician killed in foggy wreck. Last meal at Gracie's Diner." That's when I stopped laughing about the booth. After I found that old news clipping in the break room locker, yellowed and brittle with a thin layer of dust like it had been waiting for me, I couldn't leave it alone. I know I should have just ignored it, chalked the whole thing up to diner folklore and small-town weirdness, but it was like something inside me got hooked on it, like some part of me was already wrapped around booth number 6 without realizing. I started doing research between shifts, hitting up the public library downtown, scrolling through archived obituaries, scanning old microfilm with grainy black and white headlines about car accidents, fog, and the endless stretches of Route 29. And there he was, Dallas Morris. Not a famous guy by any means, but he had a small local following. A country guitarist with one recorded single and a reputation for playing open mics at gas stations and small bars. The paper said he died on October 13th, 1989, around 3 a.m., after his car swerved off the road into a ravine. The last confirmed sighting of him alive? Gracie's Diner. Waitress on duty at the time, Grace herself. The article even quoted her. He came in like always, ordered his usual, said it felt like the road was heavier than it used to be, left a tip bigger than usual, said he probably wouldn't be back. I told him not to be morbid. That stuck with me. Said he probably wouldn't be back. Almost like he knew. I found more, 2 police reports, insurance documents, even a cassette recording from a late-night radio interview he did the week before he died. In it, Dallas talked about how he always sat in the same booth at Gracie's. Said it made him feel grounded. Said, "That seat knows me better than most people do." At that point, I was convinced the booth belonged to him. That the hauntings, or whatever you want to call them, were tied to him. I thought maybe I could solve something, help him move on or finish whatever was keeping him here. I even thought I was being chosen. But that's before things started turning. It started small, my own routines began to warp. I'd wake up before a shift and already know what song would be playing on the radio. I'd unlock the diner door at 10:57 p.m. and find the lights already on. And my schedule? It changed without notice. The logbook said I'd volunteered for extra shifts, but I never remembered agreeing to them. Then came the dreams. Dreams where I was sitting in booth number 6 with someone I couldn't see, only hear. He'd hum songs I didn't know, laugh at things I didn't say, and stir his coffee even when there was nothing in the cup. I'd wake up with the smell of black coffee in my nose and the sound of clinking porcelain in my ears. Sometimes, I'd wake up with crumbs in my bed. Actual crumbs. Toast. Dry, cold, perfectly triangular. I started seeing Dallas. Not directly, not in the Hollywood ghost way, but in reflections, shadows that wore flannel and tipped cowboy hats. I saw him once in the freezer door, just a flash, standing behind me with a grin that didn't touch his eyes. I turned, nothing there. Another time, I passed by booth number 6 and saw 2 coffee cups, both steaming. No one in the booth. just the cups. Jim stopped acknowledging any of this. I think he knew it was escalating. I think he'd seen it happen before. One night, I cornered him out back during his smoke break and demanded answers. He exhaled, looked out at the foggy parking lot and said, "You think you're the first one to get curious? First one to go digging? That booth's got teeth, kid. It bites down slow. You don't notice at first, but then you look back and realize your whole damn life is gone." I asked him why they kept it set, why they didn't just close the booth off or tear it out. He shook his head and said, "Because the moment you stop respecting the deal, he starts coming early." I didn't know what that meant until a week later. That's when Dallas started arriving before 3:13 a.m. Not visibly, not physically, but the signs showed up earlier and earlier. Lights flickering around 2:30. Coffee dripping even when the machine was off. A humming voice from the jukebox singing lines I couldn't trace to any real song. One night at 1:58 a.m., I turned around and the booth was already occupied. Fully. There was a man sitting there. Not translucent. Not ghostly. Real. Physical. Staring at me with this calm, tired look, like he'd been waiting for me to notice. He wore a denim jacket, cracked and sun-bleached, and his fingers drummed on the table in perfect rhythm with a song I couldn't hear. I asked, "Can I get you something?" But my voice cracked halfway through. He smiled, slow and familiar, and said, "Already got what I came for." Then he vanished. Not like smoke, just gone. Like a frame cut from a reel of film. I dropped the tray I was holding. Jim didn't even flinch, just kept sweeping like it was business as usual. That night, after close, I found a receipt tucked under the plate at booth number 6. It was from 1989. Time-stamped, 3:12 a.m. signed at the bottom in blue pen. "Thanks for everything, D." I swear I felt something inside me shift, like a dial turning, like something important had clicked into place. I went home and found my apartment rearranged. Not wildly, not like someone had broken in, just different. My jacket was hanging on the wrong peg. My dishes were stacked in a way I never stacked them. My alarm clock was set to 3:13 a.m. even though I never touched it. And then I noticed the toast. Triangular, burnt around the edges, sitting perfectly on a plate I hadn't used in weeks. I didn't eat it, couldn't, but I sat there and stared at it for almost an hour, just listening to the ticking of the wall clock and wondering if maybe I was dreaming. But I wasn't. This was real. Booth number 6 was real. And now it had me. I stopped checking the clock. It didn't matter anymore. Time wasn't behaving the way it was supposed to. Sometimes I'd work a shift that lasted 12 hours but would swear I'd only blinked. Other times I'd show up to the diner and Jim would say I'd already been there, that I'd already clocked in, already served coffee, already cleaned booth number 6. Only I wouldn't remember any of it. And booth #6. God, that damn booth was always perfect. Every night more precise. Every detail sharper, like it was aging in reverse while the rest of the diner fell apart. The cushions on the other booths were splitting. The jukebox was half dead. The grill wheezed like a dying animal. But booth number 6? It looked brand new. No scratches, no cracks in the laminate. The light above it, always a little dimmer, now glowed with this warm, golden hue like late afternoon sunlight filtering through old window blinds. It was comforting, too comforting, like the warmth of a trap. I started sitting in it after shifts, just for a minute, just to feel the difference. And that's when things got worse. Sitting in booth number 6 was like leaning too close to a speaker playing a song you'd forgotten from childhood. It stirred something in me. It made my thoughts feel heavy, like they were soaked in syrup. I'd hear humming in my head, an old country tune that never resolved. And the longer I sat there, the more I remembered things I was certain never happened to me. Driving down Route 29 in the rain, a busted cassette player in the dashboard, a motel room with yellow curtains and a ceiling fan that buzzed louder than the TV, a guitar in the trunk. These weren't my memories, but they fit. They fit too well. And then one night, I sat in the booth and found a pack of cigarettes in my jacket pocket. I don't smoke, never have, but I knew the brand Lucky River Lights, Dallas's favorite. I remember because it was in the newspaper clipping. I lit one anyway, and when I exhaled, I saw the diner the way it looked in 1989. Not imagined, remembered. The chrome gleamed like it was new. The floor tiles weren't cracked. Gracie stood behind the counter, smiling in a way that made me want to cry. There were regulars I didn't recognize, but I knew all their names. A girl in a blue waitress uniform walked past and said, "Better get your order in, Dallas." And I nodded without thinking. My voice said, "Eggs over easy with wheat toast." My voice, but not me. I blinked, and it was gone. Back to the present. Back to the rot and dust and mildew. But the cigarette was still burning, and my hands were still shaking. I told Jim. I told him everything. He didn't even look surprised. Just sighed, poured me a cup of coffee, and said, "Some booths ain't furniture. They're traps." I asked him what he meant. He said, "Dallas ain't the only one who sat there too long. You're just the next." I was the last. That stopped me cold. I stared at him, really looked. Jim was older than I'd realized. Lines in his face I hadn't noticed before. His eyes weren't just tired, they were faded, like someone had painted them too many times. "How long you been working here?" I asked. He shrugged. "Long enough to know how the booth works. It don't kill you. It don't haunt you. It just records you, a little every night, until there's more of you in the past than the present." I asked why he hadn't left. He said, "Once it has your name, it keeps it. You can leave the building. You can quit the job. But you'll always end up back here, in some form." Then he said, "You ever wonder why the coffee never runs out?" And that hit me hard, because I had wondered. I'd never had to refill the pot for booth number 6. The cup stayed warm, full, untouched, and yet the carafe never emptied. "That's because someone's always pouring," Jim said, "even if you don't see it." I didn't ask more. I didn't need to. I'd already started noticing the duplicates, the shifts where I'd catch a glimpse of myself through the kitchen pass window, the moments where I'd see a second shadow on the floor beside mine, even when I was alone. Once, I looked in the bathroom mirror and saw myself in the booth behind me, sipping coffee, nodding along to the tune in my head. I turned around. No one there, but the coffee was half empty. I tried to quit. I tried to leave town, packed a bag, filled up my tank, drove west until the mountains disappeared behind me. I didn't tell anyone where I was going, didn't even use GPS, just drove, slept in the car, avoided diners. But on the third day, I stopped at a gas station to buy a bottle of water, and when I walked outside, the sign was there, the diner, flickering neon, open all night. And when I stepped inside, booth number 6 was waiting. Same position, same light, same cup, same silence. Jim was behind the counter drying a mug that didn't exist. "Told you," he said. "It keeps your name." I tried screaming, tried fighting it, punched walls, tore up the floor tiles. But the building always put itself back together, like it didn't care, like it had all the time in the world. The next few weeks blurred. I stopped keeping track of dates. I started writing on my arms just to prove I was still real. But even that faded by morning. The ink bled into the skin and disappeared. And worse, people began to forget me. Friends stopped replying to texts. My mom's number said, "disconnected." Social media wiped itself clean. My reflection no longer showed in photos. And yet, every night I showed up to the diner. Every night I worked the shift. And every night booth number 6 waited for me, until I started sitting there again. Because what else could I do? It was the only place that felt like mine. The only place that remembered me. And one night as I sipped the coffee, bitter and burnt and perfect, I heard the voice again. "Thanks for keeping it warm," it said. I turned. Dallas sat across from me, smiling, but not cruel, just tired. He leaned forward and whispered, "It's your booth now." And then he vanished, not with a scream, not with a burst of light, just a slow fade, like a song trailing off in the static of an old radio. The next morning, Jim was gone. I was behind the counter, drying a mug that didn't exist. And when the new hire came in, I asked him, "You got any warrants?" He didn't. I showed him the ropes, told him which booths get what. When we reached booth number 6, I said, "Leave it alone. It's got history." And for a moment, just a flicker, I saw Dallas standing outside the diner window, watching, smiling, fading. The first time I saw my own name written on the order slip for booth number 6, I didn't react. Not with fear, not even with surprise. It was like recognizing a familiar lyric in a song you didn't know you knew. I just stood there behind the counter, pen in hand, staring at the name Elliot scribbled in that same tight blue cursive mine, on a slip I never wrote, for a table that had never once been served. I folded it without thinking, placed it beneath the plate of wheat toast and scrambled eggs I just cooked, even though I hadn't meant to cook it, and carried the tray to booth number 6. I didn't stop to think about it. That's the most terrifying part, how easy it becomes, how quickly you fall into the rhythm. I set the tray down in front of the empty seat and stood there, waiting. For what? I didn't know. Something brushed past me. A gust, a breath, a thought, and then the cup was steaming. The fork shifted an inch on its own, and I heard someone sigh, content, like they'd been hungry for a very, very long time. And I said, without prompting, "Let me know if you need anything else, sir." Then I walked back to the counter. The place was empty yet full. It always was now. Reflections moved when I didn't. Shadows crossed the booths even when the door never opened. Sometimes I'd see people sitting where no one had sat in years. An old woman in a floral dress sipping from a teacup, a boy playing with a straw wrapper, a man in a fedora reading the same folded newspaper over and over. And then, as soon as I turned away, they'd vanish. Not violently, just wiped clean. I stopped questioning it. You don't question the sky for being blue. You don't question the wind for blowing. And you don't question the booth. It's not just a haunted chair. It's not even just a piece of furniture. It's a beacon, a slot in reality, a placeholder for people too stubborn to let go. People like Dallas, people like me. I know that now. I've watched the loops enough times to recognize the signs. There's a moment in every loop when the diner resets, an invisible tick where the walls breathe out and suck time back in. It always happens at 3:13 a.m. sharp. That's the center of the spiral, the eye of the storm. It's the moment Dallas died on the road, the moment Gracie wiped her eyes and set the booth again, hoping he might still walk in. It's the moment the diner became more than a diner, became a lighthouse for the dead. The regulars who come here aren't ghosts, they're echoes, feedback, individuals who left too much of themselves behind in this place, who fed so much routine into the walls that the building couldn't forget them. The more they returned, the more the diner remembered, until the place itself began to play back. Dallas was the first. I was the next. I see it now. The booth was never cursed, it was hungry. Hungry for rhythm, for routine, for familiarity. The coffee must be poured. The toast must be buttered. The song must play at the exact moment. And once it knows you, once it has your rhythm down like a needle on vinyl, it never lets go. I've tried again to leave. I've driven highways that looped me back to the same gas station. I've taken trains that dropped me off in the diner parking lot. I even tried ending my own life once. Sat in my car with the engine running, doors locked, and stared at a photo of my mother until my lungs started to slow. But I didn't die. I woke up in booth number 6. Food in front of me, check already paid, coffee hot. It's not that the diner protects me. It's that I can't die unless the booth is empty. And it's never empty. Not while I still remember the order. Not while I still know how much sugar Dallas takes. Not while I still hum the same verse in my sleep. Because I am him now. I know that. I've become the echo. My memories are no longer clean. I hear guitar strings in my dreams. I see road signs for towns that don't exist. I taste burnt toast every time I close my eyes. The diner doesn't just remember Dallas. It's been trying to recreate him. And I was the best fit. The most compatible frequency. That's what it does, I think. It's not just a place for ghosts. It's a factory. It reassembles. It tries to rebuild what it lost by feeding on the living, sinking them into the pattern. Dallas was the blueprint. I was the draft. And now, I'm nearly complete. But it won't stop with me. I know that too. Just like I wasn't the first, I won't be the last. There's someone new now. I see him when I blink. A new kid behind the counter, fresh apron, wide eyes. His name is Jonah. I asked him if he had any warrants. He laughed, said no, said he just needed work. I nodded and showed him around, pointed to the grill, the sink, the freezer, and then finally I brought him to booth number 6. I said the words I swore I'd never say. Leave it alone. It's got history. He asked why. I smiled and said, some customers stick around. Doesn't mean they're trouble. Just means they're not done yet. And I walked away because my shift was over. Because I'm not a worker here anymore. I'm the regular. I'm the one the booth is set for. I'm the one who tips big and never finishes his toast. I sit quietly. I drink my coffee. I hum a song that no longer has a name. And I wait. Wait for the coffee to be poured. Wait for the next 313. Wait for the next version of me to sit across from me and say, already got what I came for. The diner stays open all night. The sign still flickers. The jukebox still skips. And booth number 6 is never empty, never cold, never silent. It waits. It watches. And when it knows you, it remembers. And once it remembers you, you're part of the menu. Forever. Story 3. It started with the smell. Just a faint, sour note that didn't belong. At first I thought maybe it was the garbage or something rotting in the fridge, or maybe something had crawled into the walls and died. This building wasn't exactly what you'd call luxury. And for the price I was paying to live here, a rat corpse in the insulation didn't feel out of the question. My name's David. I'm 29, and I live alone in a third-floor apartment in an older brick building near the edge of the city. Not the worst area, but not the best either. The kind of place where you hear sirens more than you hear birds. I moved in 9 months ago after a breakup and a rough patch I won't get into here, and for the most part, the apartment did what it needed to. It kept me warm, gave me a place to sleep, and importantly, let me disappear from the rest of the world for a while. That was all I really wanted at the time. Solitude, distance, a chance to reset. But lately, I've been thinking there's something wrong with the apartment. Not haunted, not in the traditional sense. It's more subtle than that. Quieter, more patient, like something watching from behind a thick curtain or pressing its eye to a peephole in the wall, just waiting for you to notice. The first real clue came when I dropped my phone one night behind the fridge. It was late, maybe 2 o'clock in the morning, and I'd been scrolling endlessly like I always did before bed, half asleep, just trying to distract myself from the usual late-night spiral of overthinking. I was leaning on the fridge while I scrolled, and when my fingers slipped, the phone bounced once, clattered on the tile, and slid back out of reach. I swore under my breath, pulled the fridge away from the wall, and bent down to grab it, and that's when I saw the outline. There was a seam in the wall I'd never noticed before, almost perfectly hidden behind the frame of the refrigerator. It wasn't a storage cabinet, not a panel. It was shaped like a door, a narrow one, vertical, almost coffin-sized if I'm being honest. At first I thought maybe it was access to the wiring, or maybe an old dumbwaiter that had been sealed off. But as I crouched closer, I noticed the air around it felt wrong, cooler than the rest of the room. And that faint sour smell I'd been picking up lately, it was stronger there, faintly metallic, almost like rust and damp paper. I touched the seam with my fingers, and the door twitched. It moved. I jumped back so fast I almost knocked the fridge over. The door hadn't opened fully, just enough to whisper out a breath of air so cold it made the sweat on my face beat up. I stared at it for a long time, heart pounding, then did what I think most people would have done. I pushed the fridge back into place and told myself it didn't happen, that it was an old house settling, that I imagined the movement, that maybe the door had always been there and I just hadn't noticed. I didn't sleep well that night, but I didn't open the door either. Not then. I told myself I'd call the landlord in the morning, but I never did. Days passed. The door stayed out of sight, and slowly I convinced myself it was just part of the building, just old architecture sealed off and forgotten. Then, one night, about a week later, I came out of the bathroom and found the fridge pulled 4 inches forward. That's when everything changed. I just stood there for a while, staring at the refrigerator sitting askew from the wall, tilted slightly to the right like someone had grabbed it from the side and tried to yank it away in a hurry. I hadn't touched it since the night I found the hidden door, hadn't even let myself think about it if I could help it. And yet there it was, for full inches forward, enough to reveal the top edge of the mysterious seam again. At first, I thought maybe I was imagining it. Maybe I had bumped the fridge and not noticed, or maybe the floor wasn't level and it had shifted slowly over time. But the rubber feet of the fridge left clean tracks across the floor, straight and fresh like it had been dragged deliberately. I crouched down, braced myself, and pulled it out again. The door was still there. Same height, same outline, still closed, but the seal along the edge where the wall met the door looked different now. Looser, like it had been opened recently. The air coming from it felt colder than before, and that smell, faint and chemical, like something rotting inside a sealed plastic bag, was stronger. I felt sick to my stomach just standing near it. I didn't open it. Not yet. I just stared for a long time, feeling that strange, tightening pressure behind my eyes. It was like standing next to someone who didn't want to be looked at. You ever get that sense? That feeling when you're in a room and you know someone's behind you, watching, even if you don't hear them breathe? That was the feeling I got near the door. Worse even, that night, I dragged the fridge all the way back against the wall and shoved a chair in front of it for good measure. I didn't sleep. I just sat on the couch, watching late-night infomercials and glancing over at the kitchen every 5 minutes like some kind of scared animal. At 3:17 a.m., I heard a soft creak. Not from the floor, from the wall. The sound of something thin shifting inside a frame. The next morning, I called my landlord, finally. Told him I'd found what looked like a hidden door behind the fridge and asked if he knew anything about it. His voice on the other end went quiet. Not annoyed, not confused, tense. "Behind the fridge?" he said. I said yes. "Leave it alone," he said. "Don't touch it. That's not part of your unit." I asked him what it was. He said it wasn't anything. Some old sealed service duct or something from before the building was converted, he mumbled. Might be asbestos in the walls. Don't mess with it. He hung up before I could ask anything else. The call left me feeling worse than before. I'd expected dismissal or maybe curiosity. Not fear. That's what it was. Fear. I know it now. The next few days were a blur. I tried ignoring it. Tried resuming my normal routine, going to work, hitting the gym, zoning out on the couch with junk TV and leftover pizza. But I couldn't stop checking the fridge. Every time I came home, I expected to see it moved again. And every time it hadn't, I still couldn't bring myself to relax. It was like the threat had gone quiet, not disappeared. Then one night, I came home and found my kitchen light on. I never leave the lights on. I live alone and I'm cheap about my electric bill. I flicked the switch off and stepped inside, but the light clicked back on by itself. Just a soft pop and the bulb flared to life again. I stood there, staring at the fridge. It was flush against the wall. The chair hadn't moved, but the hum. There was a low hum coming from behind it now, too low for a machine. Lower than any appliance. Like a voice murmuring from the bottom of a well. That's when I made the worst mistake of my life. I decided to open the door. I don't know what got into me. Maybe I was tired. Maybe it was the stress of not sleeping, or maybe some deeper part of me just needed the mystery answered so I could start pretending again that the world made sense. I pulled the fridge out slowly, inch by inch. My hands were shaking. I had my phone light on, because something in my gut told me not to turn on the kitchen light again. When the fridge was out far enough to access the door, I reached forward and touched the seam. Cold. Not just refrigerator cold. Basement cold. Like touching the inside of a freezer full of meat. The door had no knob. Just a flat vertical surface, painted the same yellowed off-white as the rest of the wall. But as I pressed gently along the edge, it moved. It opened inward, revealing a narrow gap just wide enough to slip through sideways. What lay beyond was not a room. It was a passage. A dark tunnel, cramped and dry, lined with old boards and insulation. The smell hit me instantly, sickly sweet, like old milk and wet cardboard. I aimed my light into the gap and saw the floor drop sharply downward, like a slanted hallway heading into the foundation. No stairs, just uneven concrete with something dark and crusted dried along the sides. Handprints, dozens of them, small, child-sized, all pointed the wrong way, like someone had been dragged out. I should have closed the door. I should have sealed it and moved out the next day. But I didn't. I stood there, breathing hard, the light shaking in my hand, and I leaned in just enough to see the first step downward. That's when I heard the knock. From inside the tunnel. 3 slow knocks, steady, confident, then silence. I closed the door. I pushed the fridge back. I left the apartment that night and didn't come back until noon the next day, under full sun with people around me on the street. When I returned, the fridge was 5 inches out again. The door was open. I couldn't stop thinking about the tunnel behind that hidden door. Every waking moment, it was in the back of my mind, like a low, persistent hum. The way it smelled, like something half decayed, half alive, refused to leave me alone. I started obsessing over it, pacing the apartment late into the night, tracing the wall where the door was concealed behind the fridge. It was like the apartment itself was breathing, expanding and contracting in sync with my heartbeat, and I was trapped in the middle of a machine I couldn't control. I knew I should tell someone, call the landlord again, call the cops, hell, call a priest. But I didn't. I was too afraid of what would happen if the secret got out. What if no one believed me? What if they thought I was losing it? I felt like I was slipping, losing grip on reality. Days blurred together. I'd wake up feeling like I hadn't slept at all. But my phone insisted I'd been in bed for 8 hours. My fridge moved more often now. Some mornings it was pulled out a full foot from the wall, like whatever was behind the door was pressing forward, pushing against it from the inside. At night, I'd hear scraping sounds, slow, wet scratching like claws on concrete. One night, I swear I heard a faint voice calling my name. At first, it was just a whisper, barely audible. Then it got louder, more insistent. "David," it breathed. I spun around, heart pounding, but there was no one there. Just the empty kitchen and the looming fridge door, slightly ajar. I wanted to open it again. Needed to, almost. Like some part of me was being pulled deeper, past the fear, past the logic, into whatever lay hidden behind. But every time I got close, the air would shift. That cold rush of stale, damp breath would wash over me, and my skin would crawl. One evening, I sat in the living room, notebook in hand, trying to write down everything I could remember about the apartment's history. The building was old, over 80 years. Supposedly, it used to be a boarding house during the war, then converted into apartments in the 70s. But the records were incomplete, vague. No mention of a tunnel or hidden rooms. Just the usual paperwork about plumbing repairs and electrical upgrades. I checked online forums about the building and the neighborhood. Nothing. Just scattered rumors about weird noises and haunted vibes. But nothing concrete. Then I started hearing footsteps. Not outside, not from neighbors, but inside the apartment. Slow, deliberate footsteps pacing behind the wall, near the fridge. I tried knocking back, calling out, but no answer. It was like whatever was behind the door was watching, waiting, but refusing to reveal itself. That's when I noticed the scratches on the floor near the fridge. Thin, fresh marks gouged into the wood, trailing from the wall toward the center of the room. They weren't old. They looked like they'd been made last night or this morning. I started taking photos, trying to document everything. But the scratches always seemed to multiply. Every time I looked away and looked back, there were more, like something was growing in the shadows. One night, the air turned heavy, thick, and I felt a presence right behind me. I spun around, hands trembling, and my phone flashed its light toward the fridge. The door was wide open. The tunnel's black maw yawned, swallowing light. Couldn't resist. I stepped inside. The floor was cold concrete, rough and uneven. The walls dripped with moisture, and the smell hit me like a punch. Wet earth, rust, something rotten. I went down the slope, counting my steps, heart hammering, until I found something I'll never forget. A small wooden crate, old and splintered, with faded letters painted on its side. Inside, a stack of yellowed papers, tied with string. I brought them back up and spread them on my kitchen table. They were letters, handwritten in a shaky script, dated from the 1940s. The writer was a young woman named Evelyn, who used to live in the boarding house before it became apartments. She wrote about hiding from something terrible, that lurked in the walls and floors of the building. She described a secret passage behind the kitchen, where she could escape when the noise came. The letters grew darker. She spoke of whispers in the night, of shadows that clawed at her door, of neighbors who vanished without a trace. Her last letter was a frantic plea. If anyone finds this, do not open the door behind the fridge. It is not a passage to freedom. It is a gateway, and it is hungry. I slammed the crate shut and dropped it on the floor. My hands shook so hard I thought I'd drop my phone. The weight of what I'd found pressed down on me like a stone. I wanted to run. I wanted to burn everything and never come back. But I knew I couldn't. Whatever was behind that door was watching, waiting, and now it knew I had the letters. It knew I was getting too close, and I was terrified that opening the door was never a mistake, but a trap. A trap I was falling into deeper every day. After reading Evelyn's letters, I couldn't sleep. Every creak, every breath of wind against the window, sounded like footsteps creeping closer to that hidden door. I started hearing whispers, not loud, just soft murmurs at the edge of hearing, almost like someone was trying to speak but afraid to be heard. Sometimes the whispers formed words, but they made no sense. Gibberish, or worse, fragments of phrases, like, "Come back," "Don't forget," and "Open me." The fridge kept shifting. Every time I left the apartment for a few hours, I'd come back to find it pulled forward, revealing the door slightly open, as if inviting me to enter again. My friends stopped returning my calls. When I tried to explain what was happening, they'd laugh nervously or change the subject. I was losing contact with the world outside, trapped in this bubble of dread. One evening, I decided to set up my phone to record the kitchen while I slept. I needed proof, something tangible to show whoever would listen. At 3:04 a.m., the footage showed the fridge vibrating slightly, then sliding forward slowly, inch by inch, until the door behind it creaked open just wide enough to see pitch black. A faint glow pulsed from inside, barely visible. Then, a shadow moved inside the gap, a shape, vaguely humanoid, with elongated limbs and a distorted face that flickered like a broken reflection. It reached out toward the camera, and the video cut out with a loud static burst. I didn't want to watch anymore. I deleted the footage before it corrupted my phone, but the memory of that shape burned in my mind. The next night, I woke to the sound of tapping. Not on the walls, not on the door, on the glass of my apartment window. I crept toward it, heart hammering, and saw nothing outside but the empty alley below. But when I turned back, the fridge was 5 inches away from the wall, door wide open. The cold air hit me like a wave. I felt compelled to go inside. Something was pulling me, whispering. I stepped through the door and the tunnel swallowed me whole. This time, the floor beneath me shifted from cold concrete to slick stone. The walls glistened with wetness, reflecting a dim phosphorescent light from somewhere deep inside. I heard voices, many voices, speaking in languages I couldn't understand, chanting. I tried to turn back, but the tunnel twisted and turned, never the same path twice. Then I saw it. A room, vast and ancient, carved from stone. At its center, an altar of cracked wood and rusted metal. On it lay a mirror. The glass was cracked, but it reflected me. Only my eyes were hollow, black pits sucking in the light. Behind me in the reflection, I saw others, faces pressed against the glass, distorted and screaming silently. I tried to look away, but I was frozen, trapped in the mirror's gaze. Then I felt hands on my shoulders, cold, clammy, dragging me forward into the reflection. I snapped awake in my bed, soaked in sweat, but the feeling stayed, like I was still half inside that mirror world. Days later, the landlord showed up unannounced. His eyes were sunken, his skin pallid, and he didn't smile once. He said he was here to check the plumbing, but when I mentioned the door behind the fridge, his face twisted with something between fear and shame. He said, "You have to leave. Now, this place isn't safe anymore. No one should live here." I asked why, but he just shook his head and walked away. I realized then that I was the only one left. Everyone else had moved on, disappeared, or worse, and I was trapped. The fridge kept moving, the door kept opening, and the voices kept calling. I'm writing this now, hoping someone will find it, hoping someone will believe me, because I'm running out of time. Something is coming through that door, something ancient and hungry, and soon it will want more than just a passageway. It will want me. The nights became unbearable. I stopped trying to sleep. I'd lie in bed, eyes wide open, listening to the creaks and murmurs echoing through the walls. The fridge was a constant menace, sometimes pulled so far from the wall that the door behind it was fully open, revealing that unending black tunnel. Sometimes it was closed tight, but I could hear the scraping, the scratching, the low, guttural breathing just beyond. My hands shook every time I moved near the kitchen, but I had no choice. I needed food, water, sanity. I started leaving the apartment door open when I left, hoping that light and life from outside would keep the darkness at bay. It didn't help. The building felt alive, like it was a beast breathing through the walls, with the fridge door as its mouth. One night, I swore I saw something standing behind the glass of the tunnel. A figure, pale and gaunt, with eyes too large and black for a human. It watched me, unmoving, until I blinked and it was gone. I questioned my own mind. I questioned my own senses. But then I found the scratches again, deep gouges running from the base of the fridge to the living room. This time, there were bloody handprints on the floor, smeared and fresh. Panicked, I called the police. They came but found nothing. No forced entry, no signs of struggle, no evidence. I was told I might be under stress or sleep deprived, maybe hallucinating. I wanted to argue, but the exhaustion won. I went home, trying to convince myself it was all in my head. Then, the door opened by itself while I was standing in the bathroom. I heard the sliding sound, turned around with my heart in my throat, and saw the door yawning wide like a black maw. Couldn't resist. The pull was overwhelming. I stepped through. The tunnel had changed. It was longer now, colder, darker. The walls dripped with a thick, sticky slime that glowed faintly under my phone's light. I followed the tunnel until it opened into a cavernous space. There, walls lined with hundreds of mirrors, each mirror reflecting me but distorted. Some showed me with cracked skin, others with eyes bleeding black tears, others with mouths stretched impossibly wide in silent screams. I tried to turn away, but my reflection didn't move. I smiled. Then the mirrors began to pulse, warping, as whispers rose to a chorus. "Stay. Join us." I screamed, breaking the gaze, and stumbled back into the tunnel. When I emerged into my apartment, I was panting, covered in sweat, and clutching my phone with trembling hands. I checked the mirror in my bedroom. My reflection was normal, but for a moment, I saw a flicker behind me. A shadow, watching, waiting. I'm writing this because I'm losing myself. The apartment is no longer just a place, it's a prison. That door behind the fridge is not just a passage. It's a gateway, a trap set decades ago. And I'm the latest victim. If you find this, please don't make the same mistake. Don't look behind the fridge. Don't open the door. Whatever lives there wants you. It's patient, it's hungry, and it never forgets. Days bled into nights, and I couldn't tell which was which anymore. The apartment's walls seemed to breathe, contracting and expanding, closing in on me like a vice. The door behind the fridge was never fully shut, always ajar just enough to remind me of the abyss waiting beyond. I started talking to myself, fragments of conversations with an invisible companion whose voice I couldn't hear, but whose presence I felt as palpably as the cold seeping from the door. Sleep became a distant memory. The whispers turned to commands. Open, join, stay. They echoed inside my skull when I tried to block them out, drilling deeper every time I resisted. Food lost its taste. Water felt like poison. I stopped leaving the apartment. The mail piled up. Neighbors knocked unanswered. I was alone, completely alone with the door. One night, I awoke to the sound of the fridge moving. It wasn't sliding forward this time. It was shaking violently, rattling against the wall like something was trying to break free from inside. I ran to the kitchen, heart pounding. The door swung open fully, revealing the tunnel's black mouth. But now there was something else. A pair of eyes, glowing faintly red, stared back at me from the darkness. The shape was taller than any man, limbs too long and thin, and it moved with unnatural speed. It didn't speak. It just stared. I slammed the door shut and pushed the fridge back with all my strength, but it was like wrestling a living thing. That night, my dreams were invaded. I saw myself slipping down the tunnel, into the chamber of mirrors, each reflection twisting into a scream that tore the silence apart. I woke gasping for air, sweat cold on my skin. Days later, I found something carved into the wood floor near the fridge. A symbol I didn't recognize, circles and lines intertwined like a web. It was fresh, and I was the only one who could have made it. Or so I thought. The apartment was changing me. Or maybe I was changing it. One morning, I found my reflection in the bathroom mirror staring back with empty eyes. I blinked and it smiled. I screamed and smashed the mirror, shards cutting into my palms, but the smile stayed. On the shards, in my mind, I'm losing track of who I am, who I was. The door is always open now, waiting, patient. I don't know how much longer I can hold out. If you find this, listen carefully. Don't open that door. Don't look behind the fridge. Whatever is there is older than this building, older than me, older than the city itself. It feeds on fear. It feeds on hope. It waits for the moment you slip, the moment you lose yourself. I'm writing this because I fear it's almost too late for me. But maybe, just maybe, my words can keep it at bay a little longer. Or warn someone else. Someone who still has a choice. I barely recognize the apartment anymore. The walls sweat dark moisture that pools in corners. The air is thick with decay and something metallic, like old blood and rust. I've stopped trying to clean. It doesn't matter. No matter how much I scrub, the filth seeps back overnight. The door behind the fridge is always open now. The fridge itself leans at a sickening angle, as if pushed from within by something heavy. I've stopped moving it. There's no point. It's not just a door anymore. It's a living wound in my home, an open invitation. The tunnel beyond is no longer a passage, but a gaping void that breathes, inhales, and exhales with a life of its own. I don't want to go in, but I feel drawn to it, as if it's calling me home. Somewhere I've never been but somehow belong. The letters I found from Evelyn are my only link to the past, but even they feel distant now, like they were written by a stranger. The voices have grown louder, no longer whispers but chanting. They echo inside my head day and night, drowning out all rational thought. Join us, they say. Come home. I'm losing time. Hours, sometimes whole days vanish without memory. Sometimes I wake to find the door wide open, though I'm certain I closed it. Sometimes I see shapes lurking just beyond the threshold. Shadowy figures with faces that blur and melt into the darkness. One night, I found a mirror cracked and hanging behind the fridge. It wasn't there before. The glass reflected my room perfectly, except my reflection was empty. Void of expression, eyes black and endless. It reached out from the glass, fingers long and skeletal, beckoning me to step inside. I don't know who I am anymore. Sometimes I wonder if I ever existed outside this apartment, or if I'm just a ghost trapped in a nightmare I can't wake from. My skin feels cold, my hands numb, my breath shallow. I'm fading, dissolving into the darkness behind the door. If you find this, if anyone ever reads these words, know this: the door is a doorway between worlds, between life and something else, between sanity and oblivion. Behind it waits an ancient hunger that feeds on souls and memories, traps you by twisting your mind, by erasing your identity piece by piece. It wants to swallow me whole, and I fear I'm already half gone. Please, if you have the chance, do not open the door behind the fridge. Do not listen to the whispers. Close your eyes, leave this place, and never look back. This is my last warning before the darkness claims me completely. I don't know how much time has passed since I last truly felt like myself. The apartment has swallowed days whole, and I wander through it like a ghost without memory. The door behind the fridge is no longer a secret. It's the center of my existence, the black heart beating quietly in the bowels of this place. Last night, I finally stepped through it one last time. The tunnel was wider than ever, walls pulsing with an almost organic rhythm, breathing slow and deep like the lungs of some ancient creature. As I moved deeper, I saw the chamber beyond, the place of mirrors. But this time, the mirrors did not show me fragmented horrors. They showed my past, moments I had long forgotten, childhood laughter, first love, broken friendships, all flickering like fading candlelight. Then the reflections twisted. The faces merged into a single shadowy figure, impossibly tall, with endless eyes and a mouth that stretched into a grin without end. It spoke without words, a soundless voice that reverberated in my bones. "You came," it said. "You belong." I realized then that the apartment had been alive all along, feeding on my fear, my loneliness, my memories. The door behind the fridge wasn't just a gateway. It was a trap designed to hold me forever, to make me a part of the building's endless hunger. I tried to scream, but no sound escaped. My body began to dissolve, fading into the darkness. But before I was fully consumed, I found one last shred of will. I stepped back, breaking the gaze of the shadow, and slammed the door shut behind me. The fridge crashed forward, blocking the passage. The apartment went silent for the first time in months. I don't know if the door will stay closed. I don't know if I've truly escaped or if the darkness still watches, waiting for me to falter. All I know is this: the apartment holds its secrets tight, and whatever waits behind that hidden door will never truly be gone. If you find yourself drawn to a door you don't recognize, behind a fridge you never moved, don't open it. Walk away, because some doors aren't meant to be opened, and some shadows never stop watching. This is my story, my warning, and my last breath. Goodbye. Story 4. We didn't expect much when we booked the cabin. Just a quiet weekend getaway, a break from the city chaos and the never-ending grind. Me, my girlfriend Sarah, and our 2 close friends, all of us craving some fresh air and a chance to disconnect. The listing on the rental site promised secluded rustic charm, peaceful forest views, and a cozy fireplace. And for the price, it sounded perfect. The GPS dropped us onto a gravel road winding deep into the woods. Tall pines crowding the sky, silence so thick you could hear the crackle of your own footsteps. We pulled up to the cabin just as the sun was dipping behind the trees, its light spilling through the windows like a fading invitation. The place was exactly as advertised. Weathered cedar walls, a wraparound porch with a swing, and a small stone chimney that looked like it hadn't been used in years. Inside, the air smelled like dry wood and something faintly sour. Dust in the corners, but otherwise clean. On the kitchen table lay a leather-bound guest book, its pages thick and yellowed. Sarah flipped it open, curious, and that's when things started to get weird. The first few entries were normal enough: names, dates, brief notes about enjoying the quiet, the stars, the nearby hiking trails. But then the tone shifted. Apologies, warnings, people begging future guests to leave, to run, to never trust the woods once the sun goes down. The handwriting got messier, more frantic. One guest wrote, "We're sorry, we didn't believe the warnings. The forest watches. It waits." Another, "Never stay past dark. The trees bleed at night. They watch. They whisper." We laughed it off as some prank or weird local folklore. The cabin was remote, sure, but it didn't feel haunted, at least not at first. That night, after setting up and making a fire, we settled in for dinner. Outside, the woods were alive with the chirps of crickets and the rustle of leaves. But there was something else too, a silence underneath that noise, like a breath held just out of earshot. We joked about the guestbook warnings, teasing the idea of some forest spirit or curse. But then the power flickered, once, twice, and the fire in the fireplace sputtered as if struggling against an invisible wind. Sarah swore she saw something move just beyond the window, a dark shape slipping between the trees. I told her it was probably an animal, but the unease lingered. That was just the beginning. The next morning, the sun poured in through the windows, turning the dust motes into golden sparks. We tried to shake off the unease from the night before, telling ourselves it was just nerves or too many scary stories before bed. We made coffee, packed sandwiches for a hike, and headed out into the woods. The trail was narrow and overgrown, twisting through thick pines and moss-covered rocks. The air smelled damp and earthy, and the silence was broken only by the occasional bird call. But the deeper we went, the more I felt like we were being watched. Not by animals, but something else. The kind of feeling that presses against your skin and makes your hair stand on end. Sarah stopped suddenly, pointing at the trees ahead. Carved into the bark of one ancient pine was a symbol, a circle with jagged lines radiating outward. I'd never seen anything like it. It wasn't a typical carving. It felt old, ritualistic, a warning. We pressed on, but the trail began to change. The path grew faint, the forest darker and colder, despite the sun shining overhead. The trees seemed to crowd closer, their branches twisting like clawed fingers. Then we heard the whispers, at first just barely audible, like the wind sighing through leaves. But they grew louder, threading words through the air. Names, ours, leave, go back. We stopped, searching the trees for the source, but saw nothing. Panic flickered in Sarah's eyes. We turned back toward the cabin, moving faster now, hearts pounding. But the forest seemed to shift. The trail behind us looked different, more tangled, unfamiliar. We were lost. The sun dipped lower, and shadows grew long and thick. Somewhere in the distance, something moved. A silhouette too tall and thin to be human, gliding between the trees with unnatural grace. We ran, branches slapping our faces, roots snagging our feet, the whispers chasing us through the underbrush. When we finally burst onto the cabin's porch, gasping for breath, the relief was brief. The door was wide open. We had locked it before leaving. Inside, the guest book lay on the table, open to a fresh page. In shaky, hurried handwriting, someone had written, "We tried to leave. They won't let us. We're sorry. Run before it's too late." There was no signature, no date, just that chilling message. The power flickered again, plunging us into darkness for a heartbeat before the lights returned. But that night, nothing was the same. The forest outside the windows pulsed with life and menace, and the cabin seemed to breathe with an ancient hunger. And the guest book was filling itself with new entries. That night, sleep was impossible. The wind howled outside, but beneath it, I thought I heard something else. A soft, rhythmic tapping against the windows, like fingers drumming a slow, deliberate code. Sarah tried to calm everyone, but even her voice sounded thin, strained. We huddled together in the living room, the fireplace a weak glow against the pressing darkness that seemed to seep through the cabin's walls. Around midnight, the guest book on the table slid open by itself. The pages fluttered, and I swear I heard a faint sigh, like the breath of someone exhaling after a long struggle. The handwriting that appeared was unfamiliar, jagged, desperate. "They watch from the trees. They hunger. The woods bleed at night. Please forgive us." I snapped the book shut, but it was no use. The cabin was alive. The walls pulsed with a slow heartbeat that matched my own, and the shadows in the corners seemed to shift and grow. Outside, the forest was no longer silent. The whispers were a chorus now, rising and falling in a maddening rhythm. Sarah said she saw figures, twisted shapes moving between the trunks, faces half glimpsed before vanishing into the darkness. The others claimed they heard voices calling their names, begging them to join some unseen gathering beneath the canopy. The next morning, the sun was swallowed by thick clouds, turning the world gray and cold. We decided to leave, desperate for fresh air and sanity. But the car wouldn't start. The engine coughed and died, refusing to turn over. We tried everything, jump starts, pushing, begging, but it was useless. The forest had claimed us. Trapped and terrified, We gathered what supplies we could and tried to follow the trail out on foot. But the woods twisted, the trees rearranging themselves like a labyrinth that shifted with every step. Our compass spun wildly, useless. Panic set in and our group fractured. By nightfall, only Sarah and I remained, exhausted and hopeless. We found shelter beneath a great fallen tree, trying to ignore the creeping vines that seemed to writhe like snakes around the roots. That's when we heard the screams. Not distant, but close, right in the heart of the woods. High-pitched, human, and not twisting into a sound no living thing should make. We clung to each other as the forest seemed to lean in, suffocating. Back at the cabin, the guest book was filling fast. Messages appeared in strange scripts, some indecipherable, others pleading for mercy, begging for escape. We understood one thing clearly. The woods didn't want us to leave, and the cabin was the key to whatever darkness lived here. We spent what felt like endless hours huddled beneath that fallen tree, the forest closing in so tightly it felt like the trees themselves were pressing down on our chests, stealing our breaths. The screams had faded but left a ringing silence that was worse than any noise. When dawn finally bled through the canopy, weak and gray, we stumbled back toward the cabin, driven by a desperate hope that it might hold some secret to our survival. But the cabin was different. It stood crooked and twisted, as if warped by some unseen force. The door hung open, and inside, the air was thick with a choking, sour smell that made our stomachs churn. On the table, the guest book lay open once more. This time, the entries were frantic and raw, pages soaked in tears and trembling hands. One note said simply, "They took him. They will take us all. The forest feeds on souls." Another, "Do not trust the trees. They are watching. We are lost." Our group was unraveling. Sarah looked pale and drawn, her eyes darting nervously at every shadow. I could feel myself slipping, too, caught between terror and disbelief, sanity and madness. We tried again to start the car, but it remained dead. The forest had won. That night, the whispers returned, louder and more insistent. We couldn't sleep. From somewhere deep within the woods came a deep, guttural chanting, an ancient language that vibrated through the ground and rattled the cabin's bones. The shadows grew longer, darker, crawling along the walls and ceilings like living things. And then the scratching started, at first faint, like nails dragging across wood, then frantic and desperate, like something clawing to get in. Sarah swore she saw eyes, hundreds of eyes, peering from the trees, glowing faintly with a sickly yellow light. We locked every door and window, but it felt useless. The forest was inside us now, entwined with our fears and memories. On the last page of the guest book, a message appeared in thick, black ink. "Join us. Become one. The woods are hungry. I don't know how much longer we can hold on." The trees whisper my name now, promising release from the fear, the pain, the loneliness. But I'm writing this because someone needs to know. Someone needs to understand what we found here. The cabin is a trap. The woods are alive with something ancient and cruel. And the guest book, the guest book is the record of every soul it has claimed. If you find this story, please believe me. Don't come looking for us. Don't rent that cabin. Don't read the guest book. Just run. The night dragged on like a living nightmare. Sarah and I barely spoke, our whispers lost beneath the endless chorus of the forest screams and rustling leaves. Every time I glanced toward the window, I saw movement, branches bending unnaturally, shadows twisting into shapes that almost looked human, watching us. The guest book sat ominously on the table, its pages fluttering despite the still air. I could feel it calling to me, tempting me to read the entries I hadn't seen yet. Against my better judgment, I opened it again. The latest messages chilled me to the bone. We tried to leave, but the trees won't let us. They grow thicker each night, blocking the paths. They come closer. The eyes in the dark are not ours. They watch from the corners of your mind. They whisper secrets to make you doubt yourself. The forest is alive. It's hungry. It wants us. We are not alone. Panic took root in my chest, squeezing tight. The cabin's walls seemed to close in. I tried to convince Sarah we needed to get out, but she was barely responsive, her eyes glassy, distant. We gathered what little strength we had and ventured outside into the thick, choking woods. The trees were impossible to navigate. Roots tangled like snakes, branches snagging at our clothes and skin. The whispers grew louder, voices overlapping in a maddening cacophony. At one point, we stumbled upon a clearing where dozens of twisted, broken tree trunks surrounded what looked like a crude altar made of bones and moss. The air was heavy with decay and a scent like burnt flesh. Suddenly, the chanting started again, low and rhythmic, vibrating through the ground beneath our feet. We ran, but the forest seemed to rearrange itself, trapping us deeper in its grasp. Our breaths came ragged, and every step felt heavier than the last. When we finally broke through the undergrowth, we found ourselves back at the cabin. Only it wasn't the same. The porch sagged, the windows shattered, and the guest book lay open, filled with a new message scrawled in blood-red ink. You cannot escape. You belong to the woods now. I'm writing this with trembling hands, knowing that the forest watches and waits, that the cabin keeps a ledger of every soul it devours. If you ever find yourself near these woods, heed the warnings. Stay away from the cabin. Never touch the guest book, because once you start reading, the forest will come for you too, and it never forgets. The days and nights blurred into one endless, suffocating nightmare. The cabin, once a refuge, became a prison carved from shadows and whispers. Sarah was slipping away from me, her eyes hollowing out, her voice barely more than a breath. I tried to hold her, to pull her back from the edge, but the woods had their claws deep in her soul. The guest book was our only link to those who came before, a ledger of despair and desperate warnings that felt less like words and more like curses. Each page screamed a different story of torment, of families torn apart, of laughter turned to screams, of people lost to the forest's insatiable hunger. One entry, scrawled in a shaky hand, spoke of a shadow that followed them home, waiting in corners and under beds, feeding on fear and sorrow. Another described a night when the trees themselves bled, sap like thick, dark blood dripping onto the ground as if the forest itself was dying or perhaps awakening. We stopped trying to leave. The car remained dead, the roads twisted and unfamiliar, and the forest grew more alive with every passing hour. It whispered to me now, its voice a sibilant hiss in the back of my mind, tempting me to give in, to become one with its endless hunger. I fought it with every shred of sanity I had left. Sarah disappeared one night, swallowed by the shadows while I was trapped in the kitchen, paralyzed by cold terror. I searched for her, calling into the darkness, but only silence answered. The guest book had a new entry the next morning, written in a handwriting that wasn't hers, bleeding across the page. She is with us now. You will come soon. My reflection in the cracked mirror no longer looked like me. My eyes were black pits, my skin pale and stretched thin. The forest was inside me now, growing, changing me, shaping me for its own dark purposes. I'm writing this as a last plea, a warning carved from the depths of despair. If you find this cabin, if you find the guest book, do not read the warnings. Do not stay the night. Run before the forest claims you too. Because once the trees start whispering your name, it's already too late. I don't know how many days have passed since Sarah vanished, or if days even still exist in this place. Time has warped, folding in on itself like the twisted branches outside my window. The cabin has become a tomb, its walls soaked with the sorrow and madness of every soul it's trapped. The guest book lies open on the table, its pages no longer needing human hands to turn. They flip on their own, revealing new messages as if the book itself is alive, writing in ink as dark as the forest's shadow. The voices in my head have grown louder, no longer whispers but demands. Join us, become part of the forest. I try to resist, clinging to memories of who I was, but they feel like fragile threads in a storm. Last night, I ventured outside, drawn by a sick curiosity I can't explain. The woods were unnaturally silent, the usual chorus of insects and birds absent. In the clearing, I saw them. Figures cloaked in shadows, their faces obscured but somehow familiar. They moved with slow, deliberate grace, surrounding a great tree whose bark pulsed with a faint red glow, like a heart beating beneath the surface. I realized then that the forest was alive in a way I never imagined, sentient, ancient, and hungry. It feeds on fear, on hope, on the souls of those foolish enough to step into its grasp. The altar beneath that tree was littered with remnants of past victims. Worn shoes, broken watches, scraps of clothing. Each item told a story of someone who came here seeking peace and found only torment. I backed away, but the forest seemed to close in, branches curling like claws, reaching for me. I ran, my breath ragged, heart pounding, but I knew the truth. I can never leave. The cabin is my prison. The woods are my captors, and the guest book is my curse. I'm writing this not because I hope to escape, but because I want someone to know, someone to understand what lies beyond the trees. The warnings in the guest book were never lies. They were cries for help, apologies to those who came after. And now, it's my turn to write the last words before the darkness swallows me whole. I write this now with trembling hands, knowing the end is near. The forest's grip tightens with every breath I take, every step I try to make toward freedom. The cabin, once a quaint refuge, has become a living nightmare, its walls pulsating with the agony of those who came before me. The guest book lies open on the table, its pages covered in ink I cannot explain. Letters that crawl and shift, spelling out messages I don't remember writing but know are mine. The forest is no mere collection of trees. It is an ancient, sentient entity, hungry for souls to feed its dark heart. It traps those who enter in a web of illusions and madness, bending time and space until escape becomes impossible. I have seen the faces of those lost here, reflections in broken glass, whispers in the wind, shadows that dance just beyond sight. They plead for release, for someone to remember them, to warn others away. But the forest does not forgive. It does not forget. It does not let go. Last night, I felt the darkness seep into my skin, cold and living. I heard the chanting rising beneath the earth, a terrible song calling me home. I tried to resist, but my body moves of its own will, drawn to the altar deep within the woods where sacrifices are made and souls are claimed. As I write, the cabin's floorboards groan beneath my feet. The walls whisper my name. The trees outside lean closer, their branches like skeletal fingers reaching through the windows to drag me into the abyss. I know this is my final hour. To anyone who finds the story, this warning, please heed it. Do not seek the cabin. Do not read the guest book. Do not believe the promises of peace or solitude. The woods are a trap, a hunger, a darkness older than any of us. And once it has you, it never lets go. I am writing these last words not to ask for help. I know no help is coming, but to remember who I was before the forest claimed me, and to pray that someone, somewhere, hears my warning and escapes where I could not. The door creaks behind me, the shadows wait, the darkness calls, and I must answer.